And it looks like I am live. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. I have an interesting and unusual, at least for my channel, type of video today, and that is it's going to be a live stream of me inviting Muslims to come onto the channel and debate the Islamic dilemma with me to see if they can give a decent answer that isn't just complete garbage, but something that is actually tenable and hopefully more probable than not, and a way of escaping the Islamic dilemma. So I'm going to do some setup here just as I get ready. And I'm going to post a link to StreamYard. I don't mind having Christians jump up as well, just as long as we don't deviate from the topic. I want to give preference to Muslims in particular who want to answer this because, well, that's basically why I'm doing this. I want to have Muslims answer the Islamic dilemma once and for all. Let's see if they can do it. I have a funny feeling they won't be able to, but you never know. You always have to keep the door open a little bit, just in case someone comes and changes your mind and gives you something you've never heard of before. I got my coffee here, so I am all ready. I have a good reason to believe there might be some Christians joining us as well on the stream, which is great stuff as well. But I think a good place just to kind of get this started is just to give an overview of what the Islamic dilemma is. Now, I know a lot of you probably already know what the Islamic dilemma is, especially if you've been watching this channel for a while. But for those of you who don't know, perhaps you've been living under a rock for a little bit, or perhaps you're completely new to this, you've just stumbled on this by accident. The Islamic dilemma is the name to a certain argument that non-Muslims make that says that the Quran is self-contradictory because it does two things. On the one hand, it affirms the inspiration, the preservation, and the authority of prior scriptures. And in this case, I'm going to be arguing those prior scriptures are the Injil, or our Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the Torah as we know it today. It affirms that they are from Allah. It affirms that they're divinely given. They are authoritative. In other words, the Jews and Christians are supposed to follow these books and carry out the laws, the theology, the history, the prophecy that is within it. And this is still the case at the time of Muhammad. Simple enough. On the other hand, there's tons of verses in the Quran that contradict directly with this Injil and with this Torah. And the Quran is plagued with them. It covers them everywhere. Just as much as there are verses affirming these prior scriptures, there are verses that contradict these prior scriptures. So that kind of gives you the very baseline for this argument. We are trying to demonstrate to Muslims and to anyone who wants to know this and who is interested in this, that the Quran fundamentally is not consistent with itself. It makes claims about affirming things that it seems to not know about because it then contradicts them in a different part of the book, in a different part of the Quran. It affirms these things and then it contradicts these things. This, we would say, from a Muslim paradigm, leads to the conclusion that the Quran cannot be Allah's words because Allah will not give such a type of revelation. Hence, the Quran is not from Allah. Hence, Muhammad is a false prophet. And hence, Islam is false. Now, that's a quick rundown of the argument. I'm going to quickly post the link now just to get ready for people who might want to join later on. Just give me 1 second, guys. There we go. So I've posted it. I've pinned it onto the live chat so anyone can click there. I would ask, there will be preferential treatment to Muslims in this, obviously. So don't be too upset if you join and I don't invite you up. It's going to be limited space, limited time to get through everything. But let's see how this goes because this is the first for me. So it's a trial run. We can think of it that way. Cool. We have someone joined. Hello there.
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Is it Fazel? Is that your pronounce?
Yeah, Fazel, yes.
Cool. Are you a Muslim?
Yeah, of course, yes, I'm Muslim.
Oh, good. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, this whole live stream is set up to talk about the Islamic dilemma and to investigate any possible solutions that are probable to the Islamic dilemma. So that's kind of what
Okay.
I'm interested in. So, I mean, I'm assuming you heard my introduction to the Islamic dilemma there. I just laid out what it is, how it leads to the conclusion, if it passes, that Islam is false, Muhammad is a false prophet, and so on. So,
Yeah.
where do you have issue with it? Or perhaps a
Okay.
better way is
So
for me to maybe. Do you want to go from that?
yeah. Okay. So I don't think that's actually dilemma. As an example, there
Okay.
was a debate between Khalil Adani and Sam Shamoun. So
Yes,
Khalil
indeed.
Adani clearly said so that it is not an academic argument. That is only the Christians are who coming with this argument. So I don't think it's a dilemma at all, because when Quran confirmed the Injil and Torah, Injil mean it is the speech teaching of Jesus, what was given to Jesus. So Injil is not equal to the New Testament. New Testament is a
Okay.
biography. New Testament has some of the Injil, but in New
It's not the
Testament
whole
is not
Injil.
Injil. Yeah, not the whole Injil.
Right.
So
Okay.
like,
So let's unpack that a little bit, because obviously I've got some
okay,
thoughts on that already. So
okay.
first of all, you said like this is not an academic argument. I don't really know what the point of that is. Like, for example,
Yeah,
there are
okay,
arguments
academic.
that Muslims make. They're not academic arguments. I don't think that somehow discredits the arguments. It's just that it doesn't happen to be popular in academia right now. So that doesn't really have anything to say with the truth of the matter. You then said it's an argument made by Christians. I would say no, it's an argument made by anyone who's not a Muslim.
I don't think
Because
so.
there are atheists that bring this up as well. There are atheists that hold to this argument. AP, for example, apostate prophet, he holds to this argument, right?
No,
And he's not a Christian. So yeah.
AP. Okay, even the AP is not a Christian. He's highly, like he's a Islamophobe. He himself say that too, right? No, my point is, like, as an example, divinity of Jesus. It is not a Muslim who hold to that opinion, divinity of Jesus. Bart Ehrman, who was a Christian scholar who hold that opinion. James Tabor, Christian, hold that opinion. Dale Martin hold that opinion.
Wait, sorry,
So
hold
that's
what opinion?
the divinity of Jesus. Jesus never claimed to be God, like Bart Ehrman, James Tabor, Dale Martin.
Okay, but that's not really
These,
relevant to this discussion, though, right? So
I'm telling what an academic argument is. Okay, that's what I'm telling. So
well,
if you
I'm
say,
trying. I'm okay.
yeah,
So put it this way: there are Muslims that speak his corner that say, "Why was Jesus baptized?" And I think that's a good argument. But that isn't an academic argument. You won't find Bart Ehrman being like, "Jesus is getting baptized. Oh, this is a big problem." No, that's not of interest to him.
Okay.
So whether something's academic or not doesn't actually make any difference to the validity of the argument. Academia is an institution. Just because something is popular or not popular in that institution at the specific time doesn't really mean anything. And this is, of course, something that people who are interested in showing that Islam is incoherent would want to make. And academia is not necessarily just about that. Academia would have other objectives as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we cleared that up. And then you said, what was the next point you said? Oh, it's Jesus's words, right? You were talking about Khalil Adani, his view on this. He, of course, mentions the fact that this is Jesus's words. And this can be a criteria that we can take for granted, in essence, because it comes from the Quran and it helps us to identify what the Injil is.
No, it is not only Khalil Adani. Like, all of the major scholars, okay, all of them agree Quran is very clear. Injil means given to Jesus, teaching of Jesus. So
yeah, of course, Jesus, this is not just Khalil Adani. This is like everyone, every Muslim. I haven't met a Muslim that says it isn't, to be honest with you. I mean, it's quite clearly said explicitly in the Quran. My issue with this, though, is this doesn't actually take away, it doesn't tell us enough. So, for example, it's the words that were given to Isa, right? But the Quran in 7157 says that those words were written down in the Injil. And that's present at the time of Muhammad, because that's talking about a description of Muhammad in the Injil. So we know that whatever in the Quranic paradigm, whatever is given to Isa is then written. So now it's up to you to demonstrate that that wasn't in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Okay, so now as an example, when it is written, we don't say we are not sure all of them are written, but what you're telling is true. At the time of Arabia, 7th century, there was some manuscript which is clearly talking about Prophet Muhammad. They were part of the Injil. Okay.
Oh, wait. What are those?
Yeah, what are those? Like, description of Muhammad, they were part of the Injil. Okay, they were available.
No, you said there was manuscripts.
Yeah, that's been.
Can you name some?
No, we cannot name them because it is not mentioned in our history. Sirah, it is
Well,
not
if
mentioned.
it's mentioned, then I can just say, well, it doesn't exist. There's no evidence. What stops me from doing that?
Yeah, because because first of all, okay, when we look into these things, so as an example, Islamic history, our Hadith literature talk about these things. So if you are not believing them, okay, it's fine. As an example, same thing with Christianity. So certain things Bible speak, I can agree with them or I can disagree with them. So it's a belief, right?
Right, but,
Islam is a belief system. Okay, so our Hadith and Quran is a belief. So if you don't agree with them, that's fine.
absolutely. It is a belief, absolutely. But it also
Yes.
takes place in a real point in history with a real context. It's not devoid of context. Like we could say, we have a commitment to trying to understand the real historical Muhammad, the real historical setting of the Quran. Who were the people it was revealed to? What did they believe? Where did they live? What culture did they hold? These are actual, genuine questions. So these don't take the wayside. You have to bring this into your understanding of your belief. Because if you don't and you ignore this, then it's like you're basically believing in blind faith. You're in effect making claims that have no evidence and have no basis in history. I would rather have my understanding of whatever the Injil or the Torah is according to the Quran based in history.
Okay, but the thing is, okay, as an example, the point I'm making is, okay, Quran talk about 7th century, like Christian having some of the scripture which talk about Muhammad. Okay, now today do we have them? Or maybe you have them in your Bible, but they are not clear enough. Maybe some of them are corrupted, some of them are not. So now I don't understand the point you are making, because if you
My point
like
is that okay, so my point ultimately is that the Quran affirms the Injil. It never talks about parts of the Injil. It doesn't break the Injil down into a corrupt part and a non-corrupt part. Every time the Quran references either the people of the book or the Injil or people of the gospel specifically, it means a coherent whole. It's not saying some of them that are that the Quran is referencing, saying they have the description of Muhammad. No, they're saying the people of the Injil generally have the gospel. In fact, if you look at tafsir, just to finish on this real quick, if you look at the tafsir on 7157, on 616, you will actually see that the early commentators talk about how there were so many Christians and Jews who were living in the Hijaz or near that area that actively knew that Muhammad was mentioned in their scriptures and denied him. But of course, this is problematic because we have no evidence of this. When the Quran makes it clear, and so do the early commentators, this was a widely held belief. So if it's a widely held belief, we should see evidence of it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay, now as an example, so when Quran says the Christians have the Injil, definitely if you go to the commentaries, it is talking about three things. First, it is talking about the description of Prophet Muhammad. Second, it is talking about some of the commandments like stoning for adultery. Second, it is talking about Tawheed, monotheism. Okay, so
where do you get that from?
From the Tafsir, Ibn Abbas. So Quran, so whenever Ibn Abbas, if you go to the commentaries that's the context, okay? So when Quran say you have the Injil, definitely it is not talking about entire Injil, it is talking about these things, these three things.
But you see, the problem I have with that is that seems like it's an engineered understanding of what the Quran is saying. I just read the Quran and it just seems clear that it's just talking about the Injil generally. I mean, I think it would be very bizarre if the Quran wasn't doing that. There are verses where it tells the people of the book to follow what is in the Injil, and if they don't, they will be counted among the disbelievers. Now, you see, if Allah is only talking about a bit of the Injil and ignore all the other parts of the Injil, it seems very foolish that he never mentioned that. That's incredibly misleading. Like if I told you that you need to follow all of a book, or I just say to you, you need to read this book and follow what is in that book. You need to live your life according to that book. And then you come up to me and you say, Chris, I've been living my life according to this book. I've been doing it as you said. I go, no. I didn't mean all the book. I only meant this very small part of the book. Because everything else in the book is actually blasphemous.
Okay. Now, when you say, if you go to the Quran, what it says, believe in the commandment which was revealed to you. It was given to you. Quran talking about revelation given to the people. It did not talk about the written by the disciples. It's telling, believe in the commandments given to you. Believe in the Injil given to you.
But it did talk about what was written. That's the issue.
Yeah, what
The
was
Quran
written?
repeatedly says it is a confirmer, the Quran, of what they have with them, written with them.
Okay, written with them. What is that? Given to the Jesus.
The Injil
Not to,
and the Torah.
yeah, that is a given to Jesus, right?
Yeah, and apparently it's with them at the time of Muhammad. And they are commanded to judge by it.
Okay, so first of all, when you say Christian have to follow that one, what Islam is telling, first commandment Islam is come to Islam. Christians and Jews, they have to accept Islam. If you don't accept Islam, second option, follow whatever you have. That's all we can do. If they don't like to come to Muslims, if you don't willing to become Muslims, then what's the second option? Follow whatever you have. Second,
notice what you just said there. You just said follow whatever you have. But what if whatever they have is blasphemous according to the Islamic paradigm?
Yeah, that's
why would Allah say that?
Okay, what Quran say you have to follow? You have to follow the Matthew, or you have to follow what was given to you, given to Jesus. Given to Jesus means teaching of Jesus. So go to the Bible.
Exactly. And we know that that's written in the time of the Hijaz, and we can look at the historical context. You know that Muhammad, his companions and some of his wives went to Ethiopia, right? This is before the Hijrah, before Hijrah.
Yeah. Okay.
He went, and in Europe, not Europa, Ethiopia was a Christian nation, and we have the manuscripts of their biblical text. We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John written in their language before Muhammad even went there.
Okay, I don't deny that. What I'm telling is, if the 7th century Christian, they have the 4 Gospels, take the Gospels. Quran, what is telling? Follow whatever given to Jesus. Take the 4 Gospels. Extract the commandment of Jesus. Follow them. As an example,
how do you extract the command of Jesus?
You can find Jesus is teaching, like as an example, Matthew 5:17. Follow all the commandments. This is the commandment of Jesus. Jesus telling, keep the commandments. This is the speech of Jesus, commandment of Jesus. So as an example,
Jesus says, go on.
Okay. Let me summarize what happened to the New Testament. As an example, when it comes to Islam, we have the Quran, we have the Hadith, we have the Tafsir, and we have the Sirah, the biography. So these 4 different things are 4 different books. Quran is a separate book, Hadith is a separate book, commentary is a separate book. But when it comes to the New Testament, you put all of them in a single book. And you are telling this is the word of God.
Wait. We're not talking about the New Testament, right? My argument is not the New Testament canon. My argument is just Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John from the Injil, and the Torah being the Torah as we understand it. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy.
Okay, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, these 4 books, these are biographies and teaching of Jesus, and the understanding of the disciples. Like it's a commentaries. Like what we can say is,
isn't the Quran also biography material? Doesn't it also contain parts of the biographical?
Yeah, contain part of the biography that was revealed to Muhammad. Injil was revealed to Jesus.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it contains biographical material that was revealed to Jesus.
Yeah.
And it was written down by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yes. What was revealed to Jesus, that is Injil. That's what I'm
telling.
And the
Injil is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And in the Quran, it says that you have to follow it. Or at least the Christians do.
Chris, you don't follow the thing. I'm telling Matthew, Mark, and Luke, John has Injil. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is not Injil. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John has the Injil. How
do you know that?
That's why Jesus speaking, Jesus teaching. Go to the direct speech of Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
But the direct speech of Jesus contradicts Islam. Jesus says that in John 4. Give me a second. John 14, verse 13 and 14, that you can pray to him in his name and I'll answer your prayers. That's Jesus answering prayers. That's Jesus speaking. So the Quran is affirming this. Is the Injil?
Okay, give me the verse.
John chapter 14, verse 13 or 14. Do you want me to bring it up on screen?
Yeah, that's better, yeah.
Let's do it, yeah. Okay. Also, let me see if I've actually given you the right verse or if I've given you a wrong one. Okay, let me just share my screen for you.
Okay.
Okay, do you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see
it. Okay, so we'll start from 13. Actually, maybe 12. Very truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. This is Jesus speaking, talking about how he's about to ascend to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, whose name is that? That's Jesus' name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it.
Okay.
So does the Quran agree with this?
No, what says so? Jesus telling, I will do it. Muhammad can do the same thing. Muhammad can, because as an example, Muhammad himself said, some of the companion will be in heaven. How
Wait,
Muhammad
are you
can do
telling
that
me
same?
that people can pray to Muhammad? Like, people can't pray to Muhammad, can they?
No, it is not praying to Muhammad. Jesus telling when he's on earth, you can ask me anything, I will give you. Because how Jesus is going to give? He's going to pray to the Father. The same way Jesus telling, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit. How is he going to send the Holy Spirit? Because he is going to pray to the Father. So Jesus telling,
this
I
is
can do
talking
nothing
about
myself.
as after he ascends to the Father, he's telling them, I'm going to the Father, and I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me anything in my name, and I will do it.
Okay, so you understand this one after Jesus' ascension. That means after Jesus' ascension, you can ask him anything. This is how you take it.
Well, yeah, it seems quite clear. It says that he is going to the Father.
Okay.
It's I mean, we can go to other ones if you want. How about John 16:30? Let's try that one. Like, we can just keep doing this. But the point is you know as well as I know, there are verses in the Matthew, Mark, Luke, John Injil that contradict Islam completely. There are words that are spoken by Jesus. Let's have a look at 16:30.
Okay, in that case,
here we go. Let me just read this one just to demonstrate to you so we can establish this very clearly. Then Jesus' disciples said, now you are speaking clearly and without figures of speech. So his disciples think that Jesus is speaking clearly and without figures of speech. Now we can see that you know all things. Jesus knows all things, and that you do not even need to have anyone ask you questions. This makes us believe that you came from God. So the disciples thought Jesus came from God, and then he knows all things. So he's omniscient.
Yeah, because first of all, okay, when all things, when it is mentioned, it is talking about the context, okay. As an example, if you go to Luke chapter 3:1, it is mentioned the Roman governor asked census to be taken all the world. Even though it is all is mentioned, it is come in a context. It is talking about Roman Empire. So here Jesus telling, okay, even if you take it,
yeah, but that's self-evident. No one would think that a Roman governor is asking to take a census of like Eastern Asia. Like that would make no sense.
Okay.
In this context, though, again, this isn't figures of speech. The disciples understand that Jesus knows all things, and that he does not need to ask anyone questions. He already knows everything, and that makes them believe he came from God. We can keep going through more and more and more, and it's going to get more and more ridiculous when you start to try and keep giving alternative, like less likely context for each verse, right? It's going to get less and less likely. So let's accept that there are things that Jesus says in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that are contradictory to the Quran.
Yeah, of course, I agree that one. As an example, one of the clear verses is Jesus used to drink alcohol. Jesus allow alcohol, but in Islam it is forbidden. So in that sense, when there's a contradiction, we have to go to the Quran, because Quran says Quran is a supreme authority over the scriptures. So when there's a contradiction, go to the Quran. As an example, Jesus speaks to God as a father, but when it comes to Quran, the father is not even mentioned. So what we are thinking...
Are you aware that the word Muhammad in Surah Al-Ma'idah ayah 48, which is where you're quoting from, that word can have many different meanings. It has a wide semantic range, and some early tafsir writers thought it did not mean supreme authority. I mean, even that's ambiguous. That doesn't mean that it has the right to correct things. Most Muslims will go with the word criteria to try to imply that. But there are other meanings that are possible too, like guardian. If it's a guardian over the previous text, that doesn't imply that it has the right to just contradict it and change it whenever it wants to. So holding to that, I think, is really unlikely.
No. First of all, that's mean it can have all the meaning. It is a guardian, it is a witness, and it is a supreme authority. That's meaning complement.
Yeah, but my point is that usually in language, when people use a word, they don't mean every single possible way of looking at that word. They're usually using it in the context of a particular way, right? Like there's a verse in the Gospels that say Jesus is a door. I don't actually believe that the literal sense is a possible reading of that, right?
Okay.
So we have to understand that there is like some viable ways of reading and some ways that aren't.
Okay, yeah. So the people who said it is a witness, it is a guardian, they never rejected the meaning. It is a criteria. Okay. Normally the major opinion is even if you go to the translation, it mentions supreme authority or the criteria. Okay, I go with the major opinion. Even if there's a witness, the meaning complement. It is a witness, it is a guardian, also it is a supreme authority. So in that case, even if it's a contradiction, I think there's a genuine contradiction. Okay, as an example, in Old Testament, it is son of God concept. It is not here. So we cannot use the same language. It was abrogated. It was changed, I think.
Wait, it was abrogated. So the Torah used to say Son of God and also the Injil, but that's no longer the case because the Quran abrogates it.
I think so, because I think so, because that is opinion of the Ibn Taymiyyah also, like son of God concept. Son of mean like not your son of God, your version of son of God. The son of God mean that metaphor, not the literal version, because son of God mean David is son of God, Adam is son of God, all the Israelites are son of God. That's a metaphor. In that sense, you can call them, because God is going to protect you.
Well, in Surah Al-Ma'idah ayah 18 and other verses, the Quran makes it clear that Allah is not a father in any sense. So I find that really difficult. How can that be abrogated? Why would Allah intentionally allow confusing language? And keep in mind, by the way, when the Injil is revealed, the Torah has already been around for a long time. So Allah could have used that opportunity to correct that then, but you're telling me he just didn't see that as an issue. He's got all these Jews who are thinking they are, in some real sense, the children of God, or children of Yahweh. And then when the Injil comes around that he gives to Isa, he doesn't tell Isa, by the way, you need to tell the Jews to stop saying that, it's wrong.
No, because actually the reason is even that abbreviation you can find in the Old Testament too. Like as in Hosea chapter 2, God says, don't call me master, call me husband. Okay, in Old Testament, God has been called husband. God is telling, I can give you the verse, is tell, don't call me master, call me husband. Because the master in the Hebrew is Baal, but Baal was used for another god. In Hosea means northern Israel. Northern Israel is not Judea, southern kingdom. In northern kingdom, that's a different culture. So God is telling, no, don't call me Baal, don't call me master, call me husband. Because if you go to the commentaries, they explain why this command was given. Because at the time, the people, there was a religion that has a god named Baal. Because of that one, when Jews are speaking Baal, maybe it may reference to that false god. Because of that one, God abrogated. So even
but do
Old
you see how
Testament
this is like really ad hoc? You understand, like, why would I? What would lead me as someone who isn't in the Islamic paradigm to think that that's actually how Allah's providence works? That he allows for incredibly like ambiguous words to be used that are taken totally out of context in the Islamic paradigm by the Jews and by the Christians, but he doesn't care to like correct it at any point. I don't understand why God would do that.
No, my point is, I don't understand your point, because even Old Testament, if God can do that one for different culture. When it comes to Islam, is going to go through the multiple cultures. As an example, my opinion is Jesus came for only the Israelite people, Jewish people who are living in Israel. So for the Jewish people, they know what is meant by father, they know it's good. But if one religion is going for all the culture, like even in Eastern culture, like if you go to the South Asia, they used to worship their mother and father. So now if they're going to call father to the God, then that is a confusion. So that's why when it comes to Islam, it is going to go for multiple cultures. Because of that, when God says, no, don't call me father.
I don't understand why Allah could not have just told the Jews, don't call me father. That seems like the most simple. I mean, even like cultural differences, I don't think that's something that is going to stop you from understanding the idea that it's not appropriate to think of themselves as children of God. And yet Allah not only didn't do that, but actively told them in multiple places, like Deuteronomy 14:1, for example, that they actually are children of God. But he means it in a different way.
That's what I'm telling.
That he never clarifies.
No, you don't get my point. I'm telling in the Old Testament, it is okay to call them father, but when it comes to Quran, it is not okay. In the Quran, it is clearly mentioned,
but why would he tell them it's okay in the first place?
Because same thing in the Hosea, why God is telling, don't call me master. My Hosea chapter in your New Testament, why your God is telling, don't call me master. If you are completely two set of standard. Quran cannot do it.
No, I think Bible, this is I mean, we're talking about very important theological understandings of God. You're asking me to believe not that God didn't reveal things at certain points, which I think is reasonable, but rather than God revealed the antithesis of that. They got confused by it because they took it in a way he didn't mean. He then didn't correct them for a long period of time. He even sent down more revelation and still didn't correct it. And then finally in the Quran, he goes, whoa. He does a 180 and says, actually, no, that's bad. You guys shouldn't be doing that.
Who confused them? I don't get your point.
Well, it would be Allah, because Allah sent that in the revelation. He told them to call them children of Israel.
Okay, that's fine. I'm telling that's okay, because in the Jewish context, son of God mean it's a metaphor, right? The son of all the Jewish people know the son of me means a metaphor. No one took it as a literal. That's why all are son of God. I don't think you're not following. I don't think you're following me.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to have to disagree heavily here. I don't think that's a very probable way of looking at scripture, and I think that introduces tons of theological problems that, man, I think you could spend a decade trying to resolve those. But my main thing that I would have against the criteria argument is that I don't think the Quran is sufficient as a criteria. So, for example, in the Old Testament, in the Torah, it talks about how Lot's daughters had sex with him, right, while he was asleep.
Yeah, Chris, one more thing.
Just one more thing real quick, and you can answer this, and we can do whatever from there.
Okay.
In the Quran, where does it say that that is not correct?
Okay, just one more thing, okay? So before that, so when it comes to son of God, what you mean by son of God? Because son of God is a metaphor, everyone knows. Even your Bible, even Christian scholars, they are telling when Bible called New Testament called son of God, it is talking about metaphor. But when it comes to Jesus, that's different. That's what they say. But when it comes to
of course, and I believe that. I believe that the term son of God is used in the Old Testament and even in the New Testament in a way that is different than when it is applied to Jesus. Absolutely. Jesus is the monogenes. He is the unique Son of God.
Okay,
and he says this in John 10, 34 to 38, I think.
Okay, anyhow. So, but you agree, Son of God means metaphor, right? So that's have no issue with Islamic theology.
Yeah, but this isn't God sending something, intentionally confusing people to then abrogate it in a later revelation. This is God giving a term, using it in a particular way that is still valid and completely fine at the time of Jesus, but Jesus takes it and then he applies it to himself in a unique way. So it's not one for one. We're talking about two different things here.
Yeah, Chris, it cannot be a confusion, because it will be a confusion if in Hosea is given to the Jewish people. Quran was mostly given to the Arabs. So they do not know the Christians are telling Father at that moment when 7th century.
Well, the problem is that the Quran, according to your belief, is for mankind.
Yeah,
which of course makes it more problematic because the arguments it makes in favor of being accepted by the Jews and Christians don't seem to work when you apply it to a worldwide context.
Okay, first of all, when it comes to so what you are telling is, even within the Jewish culture, God is telling, don't call me master. So, but initially he is clearly telling, I'm the master, but you don't take it as a confusing. But when it comes to Arabs, they don't have any religion. All of a sudden Muhammad comes and he gives them God as a master, but you are telling this is confusing. Like, even in New
Testament, that's a totally different thing. I never mentioned that at all.
No, but I don't understand why you hold two different standards.
So remember, just going back to my question here, I talked about how, because this is based on what you were saying with the Quran 548, Muhammad, it's a criteria over the prior scriptures. So you can use this as a reference for deciding what is correct in the Injil and what in the Torah and what is wrong in the Injil and Torah, right? How do you know that when it talks about prophets sinning in the Torah that we have today and was the same at the time of Muhammad, that is not actually part of the real Torah that was sent down to Musa?
No, because according to our theology, it is very clear when God, the prophets cannot do major sin. As an example, when it comes
where do you find that in the Quran? Because the Quran is criteria, right? So we should be able to use the Quran to determine this.
Okay, so when it comes to Quran, like Quran deny the Aaron who did the golden calf. Quran deny Solomon worship idols. So from this one, it's an inference. We are getting conclusion from the Quran. The prophets cannot do major sin. Quran clearly telling.
Wait, doesn't the Quran in Surah 21 say Abraham sinned?
It's a minor sin. It's a minor sin. It's a he.
Where does the Quran say it's a minor sin?
Yeah, it's a minor sin because, as an example, what Abraham did to save himself. As an example, certain context, certain situation, you can lie to save your life. As an example,
so it's permissible in some situations. Okay, so
yeah, but that's
what about
an exception.
Lot's daughters, though? Where does the Quran mention that? Yeah, because Lot's daughters had sex with Lot, yes, and you guys consider Lot to be a prophet. So the Quran should come down and correct that, because according to your belief, that's incorrect. The prophets didn't sin, so there's no way that Lot would have actually done this. So show me in the Quran where it says that.
First of all, even if Quran did not say that one, that doesn't mean Islam is wrong. That's the argument of silence. Okay, if Quran do not mention that one, that doesn't mean Quran is wrong. Second, even your New Testament contradict that one. Second Peter telling who Lot is a righteous person. So you are telling the Peter did not believe that was authentic. How Lot can be a righteous person if he slept with his daughters? Because your New Testament, Peter, Second Peter, I can give you the verse. Peter telling Lot is a righteous person.
Are you
So how can
appealing
he?
to my scripture to
You
use as
appeal
a
to my scripture.
criteria for your scripture?
No. You appeal to my scripture. No, I cannot appeal
No,
to your
my
scripture.
point is that if we're using your scripture, right, if we're using the Quran to be able to determine what was correctly in the Torah that's actually given to Musa and what's the corrupted part that people have added and changed over the years, we should be able to find, given 548, the Quran is Muhammad, its criteria, we should be able to find in the Quran where it says, by the way, Lot did not do this, or it retells the story in a way that explicitly condemns that.
Okay, I tell you, when it is say, when it talk about the Solomon, when it talk about Aaron, then we got the idea prophets cannot do major sin. So from that one, we say Lot did not do it. That's an inference. That's we take the theology. Quran do not say everything. When Quran give a standard, we can apply the same standard to all the prophets. So in the same
It
way,
looks like you're saying that the Quran is not sufficient as a criteria, and you need to appeal to other things.
now Quran, we got the inference from the Quran itself. Quran itself say
But
that
what? I've read the Quran. There's nothing in there that would imply that this didn't happen at all.
No, it did not happen, but Quran says prophets cannot major sin. From the inference from the Quran, we can get prophet cannot major sin. That's mean
Wait,
no.
Where do you get that inference from? That the prophets cannot do major sin?
That's why I told Quran deny the Solomon worship idols. Quran deny Aaron committed that golden calf. Aaron did
Okay,
golden
but
calf.
we can change this though. Like I can say to you, so Abraham sinning is one thing. I'm going to bring Ibn Dawood up here because he just joined. Hey man, how you doing?
Hello. How's
So this
it going?
guy's, yeah, it's going well. So we have Fazel here who's trying to explain how the Islamic dilemma is not actually a dilemma, but there can be a reasonable answer to it. And we're at the point where he's talking about Surah 548, which talks about the Muhammad, the criteria.
Yep.
And I'm demonstrating to him that there are things that are missing in the Quran, which means that the Quran cannot be a criteria over the prior scriptures. And we're talking about prophets sinning, and he's talking about the minor sins and the major sins. So, Fazel, I mean, from my point of view, it would be very simple. You would just have to show me where it makes this in the Quran, where it specifically says there is such a thing as minor sins and major sins, and that the prophets cannot commit major sins. Keep in mind, Surah 48, Ayah 2 says Muhammad committed sins.
Yeah, that's a minor sin. Because
how do you know it's a minor sin?
Because from our literature, from our hadith, that is an Quran itself says.
Now the Quran isn't a criteria anymore, is it? You're appealing to hadith. Which is fine if you want to do that, but you need to understand that this demonstrates that you saying, look, 548, the Muhammad, the criteria, that argument saying that you can use this to be able to separate what's false from what's true in the Torah and the Injil to solve the Islamic dilemma doesn't work because there are holes in this everywhere.
Chris, you don't even understand. So if we use hadith, that doesn't mean Quran is not the authority. That to confirm Quran is the authority because Quran is the one telling go to the hadith.
Okay, so how many times, just to demonstrate how this doesn't work, how many times do you pray?
5 times.
Okay, is that in the Quran?
That's what I'm telling. Quran appeal to hadith. Quran says, obey Muhammad, obey Allah. Obey
okay,
Allah
so
Quran,
the hadith is a criteria over the Quran.
No.
But wait. Isn't 5 times mentioned in the hadith not in the Quran?
Chris, okay, every Muslim knows, okay, we have 2 sources, okay, even like I don't know like what you are telling me, because if we appeal to hadith, that doesn't mean Quran is not the authority. That means Quran is the authority because Quran is the one telling go to the hadith. Quran is the one clearly telling go to the hadith. So
Fazel, you're making a bit of an error here. So you're saying that the Quran tells you to go to the hadith because it tells you to listen to Allah and the Messenger. But how do you know that listening to Allah and the Messenger equals going to the hadith when there are millions of hadith, so many that you can't actually tell what's real from what's false, and you have to grade them to tell you what's real and what's false? So if the Quran is telling you to go to the hadiths, does the Quran, for example, also tell you how to differentiate between the hadiths that are true and the hadiths that are false? or do you have to make all this stuff up later?
Okay, now when it comes to hadith literature, when it comes to hadith, we classify hadith based on our common sense, based on the hadith answers, based on our understanding by reliability.
Does the
And
Quran tell you how to
authenticity.
do this stuff?
No, we do that one based on the knowledge. So I can ask you the
Okay,
same thing. The
so
critical Bible scholarship. How you do that one? Bible
here's
says
the
how to.
issue.
You don't
So
apply the same standard.
here's the issue. The Bible doesn't tell us to appeal to critical scholarship, but you're making the claim that the Quran tells you to appeal to the Hadiths by virtue of it telling you to listen to Muhammad. Well, my issue then stands that if the Quran has you going to the Hadiths in order to explain the things of the Quran that make no sense, then the Quran itself, by itself, without the Hadiths, cannot be a judge over prior scripture when it is silent on the majority of prior scripture.
Okay, no, actually I do not get the point. So okay, but can you repeat the
The
point?
Quran is not enough by itself to be a judge for the Bible, for the Torah, for the Injil. It doesn't have enough information to judge over the prior scripture. And this is proven by the fact that you have to
Okay.
go outside the Quran to Hadith to
Okay.
explain to you what's in the Quran. So that statement the Quran is making is a false one.
No,
Yeah.
that will
And that's
that
the
will
problem if you take it as meaning a
that is
criteria, right?
okay. That is not wrong. Maybe you can say Quran is not only the authority, Hadith also the authority, but that doesn't make Quran is wrong, right?
But wait. Where does the Quran say the Hadith are an authority on what the Injil and Torah are? Because notice you don't have a verse that says that.
Okay, when it come to Quran, okay, Quran, our authority is Quran is a Muhammad, okay, but Quran itself says if you cannot find something, go to the Hadith, obey Muhammad. Mean we have to listen to the Hadith too. Hadith explain the Quran, so every
But the
Muslim
Hadith
knows
doesn't talk about Lot's daughters either. Your Hadith doesn't do that. So your
Yeah,
Hadith also fails. So
no,
now you need
Hadith-
another authority. So you have the Quran as one Muhammad, your Hadith as another Muhammad, and you need another thing for the third Muhammad to tell.
No, Chris.
You understand how bizarre this is?
Chris, I told you clearly, Quran itself says prophets cannot make a sin. No,
Where does it say that?
I told you, Quran denied that Solomon worship idols. Quran
but that doesn't mean that prophets can't commit major sins. That just means that perhaps the Quran thinks that didn't happen. But that isn't a definitive theological statement that prophets can't commit major sins. You need to show me that.
Yeah,
in fact, the Quran clearly says that Abraham sinned and Muhammad sinned.
Yeah, those two are minor sins. From that one, we can say prophets can do minor sins. They cannot do major sins because major sins have been denied, minor sins have not been denied.
Minor sins and major sins are not found in the Quran. You won't find any distinction like that at all.
Yeah, but we can understand, right? Because as an example, if you are going to lie to save your life, definitely that's commanded as minor sin. If you are going to rape someone, that is a major sin.
Yeah, right? But what if you have, okay, Fazel, Fazel,
did Jesus say what is minor sin, major sin? No, but we can understand with our intellect, right?
Fazel, what if then, so you said if you lie to save your life, that is a minor sin. And then you said the action of because on the internet, the action of grape is a major sin. Fazel, what if you have to grape to save your life? Is that a minor sin or a major sin?
No, that's not going to happen. But you are asking an exception.
No, but wait. Hold on. Somebody puts a gun to your head and tells you to grape somebody or they'll kill you. If you then grape the person, is that a major sin or a minor sin?
Okay, now first answer the same on the Bible. Okay. Based on the
Fazel, I asked you a direct question.
Okay.
Give me a direct answer.
Okay. So your question is, if you put someone into your head and rape someone
to save your life, is that a major sin or a minor sin?
That one's a major sin because you are committing a major.
Okay. So here's what you've done, right? Essentially, your criteria of major and minor sins is inconsistent because lying is a sin. It's a major sin. It's in one of the 10 Commandments, which you also would affirm as being a Muslim and believing in the prior scripture. However, then you're now including certain exceptions where you can lie as long as your life is at risk, and then that somehow converts a major sin to a minor sin. So why doesn't that also extend to other actions like grape?
Yeah, that's an exception, right? That is not a standard. Everything has an exception.
Okay,
You bring
great.
up
So
exception.
does grape has an exception? Is there a way that grape can be a minor sin?
Yeah, that he's forced to do, right? How can because either he will be killed or he will be forced to do. So
So
what?
does that make it a minor sin, Faisal?
Yeah, but so
Right, just to
okay.
jump in here real quick. There is a comment here, which is, what is David's YouTube channel called, please? Try to find it ages and nobody knows. David, would you like to, yeah.
It's called Chris the Speaker's Corner.
Well,
I don't have one.
yeah, he's gone. Let me just hide this here.
Okay.
Isa, hello there. How are you?
Hey, Chris. It's a pleasure to meet you.
I swear, have we spoken like briefly in the past?
Maybe. I don't know if it was on Crossing the Crescent. I'm not sure if you
Possibly.
there,
I think like very briefly, I think we did. But yeah, it's good to see you again, if we did.
Pleasure. Thank you.
No worries. So the conversation, the debate that I'm having here is about the Islamic dilemma. It's been quite the rage lately. We had Sam Shamoon and Khalil Aldani. They debated it. That brought a lot of attention to it. I have my own opinions on it because I did a deep dive on it, and I am convinced that it does actually pass. I think it's an argument that shows that Islam is false. And I have an interest in this because I am a polemicist against Islam. And I'm also a Christian, so I call people towards our Lord Jesus Christ. So yeah, welcome to the panel. Is there anything you'd immediately like to jump in on? Is there anything you've heard me say that you disagree with, or?
I think it is an interesting hot button issue, and I think a lot of it is engaged with folks have certain presuppositions, particularly that I've seen within the Muslim world, where folks are like, well, the texts are corrupted, even though there's no. I actually agree with the Christian apologetic on that, where they're like, well, the texts aren't corrupted. I think that's true. If the texts were corrupted, then that's a huge theological crisis. If we say that the scriptures, the Torah and the Injil, or you could say the Torah and the Gospels, or the Tanakh, if we say all these texts are corrupted, that means that God allowed for holy texts to be corrupted, and I think that's a problem. I think that's even a deeper theological crisis to hold on to if we do say that there is corruption, personally.
I completely agree, yeah. I wouldn't want to take that position as a Muslim. If I was a Muslim, it would be untenable to me.
Okay, I think it is a common sense. The New Testament, Old Testament has been corrupted because whatever position you have, like Catholic have the 67-3, the Orthodox has the 67. So if you are
can I ask you a question real quick? Well, first of all, that actually doesn't apply in this situation because we're talking about the Torah and the Injil.
How many?
So that actually doesn't do anything. But what I just ask Fazel real quickly. What do you mean by corruption?
Corruption, if you add something, if you remove something, if you modify something, that's a corruption.
But say for example, so I have a Quran somewhere, it's either on my bookshelf or it's somewhere in this room. If I took that Quran and I edited it, right? I say for example, I knew Arabic. I don't, but let's pretend for the sake I do. And I edited that copy that I have here with me in this room, and I wrote something fundamentally against Islam, right? Maybe, I don't know, I deny Tawheed or something. Have I corrupted the Quran?
No, you have corrupted your Quran. Not
okay. So I've only corrupted a copy of the Quran. Is that right?
Copy. Yeah.
Okay then. So when you say the Injil and the Torah have been corrupted, do you mean that all the manuscripts have been edited in such a way that the originals have been lost, and the ones that have been edited in multiple different nations by multiple different groups? Some of them even having religious cooperation, like in the example of the Torah, because the Jews and the Christians have their own copies of the Torah, in a way that is uniform. So the same change is being made to every single copy uniformly. Or at least we could say most of them. Let's go with that. Is that what your argument is? Is that how you would understand corruption?
No, first of all, okay. Now, today we have the multiple books, but way back 2,000 years ago, they had only a couple of scriptures, okay, a couple of books. So what they have done, normally the corruption, I think basic corruption happens. They have the Injil. Along with Injil, they add the opinion. They put their own words into the Injil, and they said whole book is Injil. No, that's the basic level of corruption happened. Then after that, many people keep adding the words. Then, like, that's how the corruption started.
Wait.
After
So
that,
just to make sure that we get this clear, you do think that in the example of the Injil, which I think is the easier one to solve, there was some sort of widespread altering that was uniform across all of Christendom.
No, because it doesn't need to be all of the Christendom, because 2000 years ago they had only 1 or 2 copies, not like today. Today we have the millions copies.
Well, remember that just like with the Quran, the Quran, for example, is a recitation, right?
First of all, they were not compiled into one canon. Like I think the compilation happened in the 4th century, I think. So they have so many manuscripts. When they canonize a script, they do not know what to choose, what not to choose.
Right, but you understand that we have manuscripts, for example, of the Gospel of John, I think it is, and P52, which is dated to the 2nd century, and that's John 18, somewhere verses, in John 18.
Yeah,
so we can demonstrate that there is an evidence of this existing in the 2nd century. So if it's corrupted, you would need to have a very early corruption.
Yeah, because your Paul talking about corruption. Paul is telling many people are changing the word of God. Your Paul is witnessing. Paul is a witness to the corruption in the New Testament. Can I give you the verse?
Wait, what's Paul got to do with this? This is the Injil and the Torah.
Oh yeah. But your Paul, you are asking what is evidence. Your Paul is an evidence corruption happened. Your Paul is telling, I think I forgot the verse. Paul is telling corruption. People are changing the word of God. So your Paul is a witness.
You think that Paul is saying that there is a universal, worldwide corruption of something in every copy?
Paul is telling many people are corrupting the word of God. Not one.
I would love to think what you think that verse is, because I have no idea why anyone would hold to, in all honesty, an idea of universal corruption, both in terms of recitation, because again, the Gospels were recitations before they were actually written down, and then you have to believe that once they're written down, which according to the Quran actually happened, and you can still call it the Injil and Torah, this is 7157 in the Quran, you have to believe that somehow all of the copies were changed, or the vast majority of them, and the recitation that was known by the disciples, by the apostles, by, in effect, the Salaf of Isa, if you kind of think of it that way, you have to think that all of that was corrupted in the same way.
Okay.
That to me is like, that's Illuminati conspiracy level theory. That's what that is.
No,
if you can give me a way how that can happen, then by all means do. But I've never heard an understanding of this that makes sense to me.
Okay, now as an example,
hang on, let's have a look at Isa. Isa,
I have a question. If there is corruption, so my field is academia. So I've been doing school pretty much my whole life, just studying, learning, going to college. This is what I do. That's like my perpetual life is college. So I've done a lot of work in comparative religion and history and stuff like that. So one thing that's important for me is if we argue that there is corruption, there has to be an original text that there was corruption from. So if we're arguing corruption, then I'm sorry, we have archaeology that goes to thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, where we can find original pieces. We can find cave paintings. We can find ancient pieces of literature. If we're arguing that these texts are corrupted, we would have to have an original text that we can showcase corruption. If we don't have an original text, we can't claim corruption. As an academic, we can't do that.
I think that's a really good point.
It's a bit. That's the point. But Quran give the definition of an Injil, right? Quran give definition. That is a speech of Jesus. That was given to Jesus. But the problem is we can't. That is the commandment of Jesus.
I understand and I agree. It does say that. The issue, just to go back to what we said earlier, is that it doesn't eliminate the fact that that very revelation given to Isa could not be preserved in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It doesn't eliminate that possibility. And again, the Quran says it was written down. So I think it's reasonable to assume, okay, the Injil comes from Allah, it is given to Isa. This other verse says that it is present at the time of Muhammad, it contains a description of him, and it is written in the Injil. I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, oh, well, it's the same Injil.
Okay.
Especially since the Quran doesn't make any distinction between them.
If I can comment on the things that Fazel has said so far. So I'm going to ignore the comments he's made about different books in the Old Testament and how that somehow means corruption. But let's just take his own standard and try and see how well that works for him. So Jesus is given something. He's taught something by Allah. It is called the Injil. The
Yeah.
claim that Isa and many Muslims would make is that the Injil is a singular word, therefore it's talking about a singular thing. Well, if we look at the Quran is a recitation, and we know that the recitation contains multiple words. Even if you go to apparently the first surah to be revealed to Muhammad, right? It tells you that the Quran was revealed during the holy month. Now, the thing that was revealed to him was just a number of verses, but that's enough to be classified as the Quran, as is the full 114 surah Quran. So it appears that the Quran is an improper plural, like fish and fish. So the Injil itself can also be an improper plural. It can refer to the message given to Jesus as well as the ones captured by his disciples. And secondly, according to the Quran, the disciples are supposed to be superior over the disbelievers. So let's say what Paul is referring to really does mean that people were corrupting the text in the first century. According to Allah, the believers have to be superior. So therefore, I have confidence, according to the Quran, that what Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John capture of the Injil, which is the earliest attested text that we have to the teachings of Jesus, is indeed what the Injil is, as Allah has ensured that the Hawaii and their teachings of Jesus will be preserved for all time. So therefore, you cannot make the claim, according to your own Quran, that the Injil is corrupted, because one, the Injil can be a message that is given by four people, as is the Quran, and it also has Allah protecting it for all time. So if you're going to make a claim that's been corrupted, then Allah is lying in Surah 355.
Okay, first of all, okay, your points are completely irrelevant. Okay, Quran is telling four people, Quran telling message given to Jesus. Four people write something. Okay, Ibn Abbas write a tafsir, but that tafsir is not the Quran. The same way, four disciples are writing. That is their commentaries.
How many disciples wrote the Quran? More than four. So your point doesn't stand. The Quran has been written by hundreds of people.
Quran written what they wrote.
So the Quran even has more authors than the Gospel. So your point doesn't stand.
Dawood, first let me explain. Okay, the companion wrote what was actual revelation from God. Your Matthew, Mark, and wrote their opinion. So in the same way, Ibn Abbas wrote his opinion. Ibn Abbas writing his opinion, his commentary. If Mark and Matthew Luke write their own opinion, that is their commentary.
You would need a way to prove that what they wrote was their opinion and not the actual revelation of God.
Yeah, go and see what they are telling the story, right? It's a biography. Biography cannot be given to Jesus.
Surah Taha, Surah 20 tells the story of Moses at the fire. Does that mean it's an opinion?
Yeah, but biography cannot be given to Jesus, right? How the biography can be given to Jesus? Our concept is given to Jesus. Yeah, it's a simple point, easy to understand.
You didn't ask my question. Okay, you said that because the Injil contains the stories and sayings of Jesus, that it can be revelation. I told you that in Surah Taha, it tells you the story of how Moses meets Allah at the fire. Is that an opinion or revelation?
Yeah, man. Okay, the story of Moses can be given to the biography of Moses can be given to Muhammad. Here, point is biography of Jesus cannot be
with the Injil. Easy.
Biography of Jesus cannot be given to Jesus. Biography of Jesus can be given to Muhammad. Right? Biography of Jesus cannot be given to Jesus himself.
Fazel,
don't you get that simple point?
I've got other people in the chat that want to come up. And
don't you get the simple point out? The biography of Jesus cannot be given to Jesus. That's the point I'm making.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't feel convinced by that. I don't know how others feel. They can make their own minds up.
Can I make one final point on that, Chris, if you don't mind?
Very quickly, yeah.
The biography of Jesus cannot be given to Jesus. When the Quran tells you that Muhammad is shy, that people come into his house and he can't ask them to leave, is that revelation being given to Muhammad about Muhammad?
It is something happened already. It is given to him. So when it comes to biography of Jesus, entire biography of Jesus cannot be given to Jesus because it mentioned his crucifixion. It mentioned what happened after Jesus left. How can it be given to Jesus?
But isn't that the same with Musa in the Torah?
Yeah, that's why I'm telling you. When it comes to Torah, when you say the Torah, it mentioned Moses died. Moses died cannot be given to Moses, right? Like, it seems simple thing. You guys are even don't understand the very simple fundamental things. Maybe
I think you've made our point clear, Fazel.
Thank you, Fazel. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you being here. I'm gonna kick you out now and let some others in. But God bless and have a good day, man. Take care.
Okay.
I wanted to engage one of those points, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure thing, man. Yeah, I'll let you speak before I bring people up.
So, something that I don't understand is how can we say what the scripture is or not? I don't think that, you know, the gospels, the way that they're portrayed, would not be holy scripture. I don't see what that argument is. There's a lot of arguments that I don't know where they're coming from, like the corruption of the text. I'm like, this is not from the original, you know, scholars from the time. The argument about that the text can't be written in a certain way. There's just a lot of things that I don't quite understand why they're being argued for this, and it's just like presuppose that they're true, and I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, he was like, well, if this biography was revealed, well, that makes it false. And I'm like, well, who made that standard? Did you create that standard? Because that's not like an objective standard. That sounds like a subjective standard.
Yeah, well, I would agree. I think that is an important thing to note when we look at this. I think in efforts to defend traditional understandings, and because it's very convenient to say that texts have been corrupted and hence there can't be any real comparison made, like you can't really have the Quran talk about the Injil in a meaningful sense anymore because it's been lost, you know, it's been corrupted. I think that's convenient for a lot of people, but I don't think it's really something that's supported by the Quran, and I don't think it's supported by the historical evidence. And I think it actually I think it makes the Quran a lot more problematic, basically, if you hold that view. So I'm going to have Aladdin, and there was Sig here, but I think he's jumped out, but maybe he'll join.
He might still be here. If he comes back out.
Yeah.
Am I coming clear? Good morning, everybody.
Hello, Aladdin. How you doing?
So far, so good. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So I will have a talk with 3 non-Muslims against 1 Muslim. I love it.
Well, you see, it's starting with the beef already.
1 Muslim. I love it.
We are Huwairun. We're the original Muslims, man.
No.
Yeah.
No. You know, Dawood. This is one of the lies that you just made, and I came up just to answer you. So please don't.
Well, this is just some banter. Let's keep it
out.
nice and light. Yeah.
And answer my lies, and you better have proof. I don't want conjecture.
Chris, I'm sorry, Chris. Your Bible says, "Beware of false prophet."
Okay.
And you believe you believe that Prophet
stick to
Muhammad
the
is a
topic.
liar, right? So you call Prophet Muhammad as a liar. So I see no harm.
That
Well,
is
technically,
not the argument today.
Yeah, I mean, let's not get distracted with that. The argument is the Islamic dilemma. So you've been in the backstage for a while, so I assume you've kept up with what we've been talking about so far. Is there anything that you would want to immediately add to the discussion about the Islamic dilemma?
Actually, I was listening to you from the beginning.
Great, awesome.
To the brother Fazel. First of all, you brought, I think, John 14, 13, and 14, where you said that Jesus says, "Pray in my name." Then after that, you spoke about Prophet Muhammad being. After that, you spoke, I think, about that the Quran confirmed the Bible, and it's written even under.
No, the Injil and the Torah.
Okay, it's written under yours here. Under yours.
No, it says in the Quran 7157. It says it's written.
Okay. Now, first of all, after I answer you in regard to John, that you claim that Jesus says, "Pray in my name," correct you in your own belief.
That's not the question.
That's not what I mean. All I was demonstrating with that is that there are things that Jesus says in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that are not compatible with the Quran. Do you agree?
Can I please finish? I'm trying to.
Well, Dean, you are not running the show here today. Now, we have no need to mute you.
Dawood, I'm just saying,
I am going to hold you to task if you're not going to actually interact with the topic. That's all.
Dawood, first of all, I hope that you will not speak over me. I said, "Can I please?" I did not try
so you cannot if you don't interact with the topic.
Dawood, please don't act as if being in speaker's corner. Don't act as being. This is not
then we don't want to hear
you. Please, no. It's not up to you if you want to listen to me or not. Chris, decide, please. You are guest like I am guest, so please don't jump all over me. Relax.
That's fine.
Don't worry, I won't come all over you.
No, you are
my point to you is very simple. It doesn't matter what verse you look at the whole theme in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John has narratives that are directed at Jesus' words. They claim that this is what Jesus said, that contradict with the Quran. Do you agree?
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John has nothing to do with the Injil. And they are not part of the Injil. They are totally
Okay, so I
different
assume the
things,
answer to that
and they
question
are
is
not
yes
from the
then.
Prove it.
But you're
Okay.
going to say that
Assume
the
like that.
Injil and the Torah that are mentioned in the Quran are not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they're not Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus,
Are
and
not the
Numbers and
Bible that in
Deuteronomy.
your hand. It has nothing to do with the Bible in your hands. Now prove
I
it
never
to me.
said Bible. I said
No.
Injil and
Okay.
Torah. I'm being very careful.
Prove it to me. Prove it to me that what you have in your hand is what Allah spoke about in the Holy Quran.
Okay,
It's
very
simple.
simple. We know from the historical context in the 7th century in Arabia that the general and other places that Muhammad's companions and wives went to, the understanding of the term Injil, for example, would have been Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I can give you manuscript evidence. I can give you evidence of people referring to it at that time. I can even give you epigraphy. I can give you like rock inscriptions if you want. My point is that everyone at that time, in the context of Muhammad and where he's living in the 7th century, knew the Injil to be at least Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
You see, I will repeat myself again. Please listen to me. You are listening to me, but you are not hearing me. Give me an Islamic sources, Quran or Sunnah, say that Mark, John, Luke, and Matthew are the Injil that the Holy Quran spoke about.
Okay, so
then what is the Injil?
Give me, Isa, stay away. I will answer him later on. Let me deal with the Chris. Please.
Okay, that's fine. I understand what you're saying. You're looking for something more explicit about the fact that the Injil has to be Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I would say it has to be for 2 reasons. One, the one I already gave, the historical context would immediately imply with overwhelming probability it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, at least. The second point I would say is the fact that you can look at the Quran and it has biblical inflections in terms of the language it uses that obviously point to certain gospels. Like, for example, the mustard seed being used as an analogy. The Quran makes that analogy. We find the same analogy in the Gospel of Matthew, for example. Same with the idea of the camel going through the eye of the needle. We find that in Matthew, not all the Gospels, but some of the Gospels that we have. That is also found in the Quran. And we can go through many of these different examples. And I think that's another good reason to think that when the Quran is referring to the Injil, that it's referring to at least Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It might be referring to other things, which is a whole nother question, but it has to be at least Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Otherwise, I think you would have to say that the author of the Quran is ignorant.
First of all, I can't say the same thing about your Bible that's ignorant, but I won't use such language.
Why are you talking about the Bible?
Chris, you are not listening.
I've not mentioned the Bible.
No. Chris, you are listening, but you are not hearing. I said, I will repeat myself. Give me any Islamic sources. Quran.
I quoted the Quran. I can get the verses up for you if you want.
Yes, give me the verses. I have no problem. Give me the verses supported with any Islamic interpretation saying that those verses are talking about Mark, John, Luke, and Matthew.
Okay, easy. Maududi, a modern scholar, on his commentary on Surah 19, Ayah 7, makes it very clear he thinks this is just coming from the Gospel of Luke. It is correct. It obviously is coming from the Gospel of Luke.
Give me an evidence, put it in the screen, and let's read it together. That's the way I do with you. Sure.
Okay, then let's look at
now,
Quran.
While you are doing it, can I ask?
So, Dean, you're going to have to pause because you asked for something from Chris. Now, Chris is bringing it up for you. So, while he brings it up for you, you keep quiet. You wait for him to bring up the evidence, and then you can interact with it. Until that point, we don't need you. No, you can't speak. We don't need you raising any additional issues.
Don't tell me you can't speak. You are guest like I am. Just relax.
Now the first one's on screen.
No, I want to answer Isa. I want to answer Isa.
Okay. Aladdin.
Excuse me.
Wait, you asked me for proof, and I said, okay, here's an example of Maududi, a modern scholar, who is showing you that Surah Al-Maryam, Ayah 7, is quite clearly a parallel to what has been said in the Gospel of Luke. You asked for evidence. I gave you the evidence.
There you go.
Thank you. Happy with that?
Excuse me. What did he say? Show me. We have given.
You see it on the screen. It says Maududi. And it says in Luke, the words are, there is none of thy kindred that is called by this name. And this is in reference. It even gives you the chapter and verse. This is in Luke chapter 1, verse 61, where it talks about the lineage of Zechariah and the fact that Zechariah in his family lineage does not have anyone by the name of John.
Excuse me, Chris, do you know that we as Muslims, we do believe that what does not contradict with the teachings of the Islam? teaching of the Holy Quran and Sunnah, we consider
That
it as
is not what you
So
said.
it is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and
Dawood,
John. Then.
let me speak. Let me speak. It's
So
my turn
Dean,
to speak.
Dean,
Dawood,
no.
it's my
Your
turn to
point
speak.
was this. Your
It's
point
my
was for Chris to show
turn
you an
to speak.
example of a
It's
source
my
that tells you that
turn
the
to
Injil
speak.
is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You
It's
then
my turn.
modified it to an Islamic source. Now, Chris has shown you an Islamic source that where an Islamic scholar from the 19th century is telling you, from the 20th century, my apologies, is telling you that the Surah 19 verse 7, where the Allah apparently tells Zechariah that no one has ever been given the name Yahya before in reference to his son, is actually quoting from Luke. And now he's shown you that example that shows you that the Quran makes reference to the Gospels that are in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now you're trying to move the goalpost again. We've shown you the evidence. Now it is up to you to show us that the Islamic dilemma is false. Stop jumping.
Dawood, stop cutting me off and speak over me. So listen to me as
Only
I
if
listen
you
to
answer the question.
Relax,
It is not your
relax,
show, like you
relax,
said, it is Chris's
relax,
show. So that
relax,
means when you
relax.
come here, interact with the point that's being brought on. You don't get to
Chris,
start
can I
asking
speak?
Chris for sources
Chris,
when you
can
haven't
I
provided
speak?
any yourself. So now it's your turn to provide a source.
You're done? You're finished? It's my turn to
Aladdin,
speak?
do you
No,
now
you let
accept
me
that Matthew,
speak.
Mark, Luke, and John
Let me
are the
speak.
Injil?
No.
Even though
no.
your scholars seem to think
Like
it is.
No. The scholar here said that what he quote in this verse was mentioned in the Bible. So we as a Muslims,
No, he's mentioned in the Gospel of Luke.
Let me finish, which is part of your Bible. Am I correct?
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But to
So
say
so
the
let me
Bible
finish.
as a
Let me
general
fin-
term
let-
is
no.
disingenuous.
Let me finish, please. So we
Okay.
as Muslims, we do believe whatever does not contradict to the teaching of the Quran.
Well,
and
that contradicts with the Quran.
So let me.
Yeah, it does.
Why you keep
So
cutting me off?
Adin? So here's what we'll do.
Dawood,
Do you
Dawood,
believe that what
can I
Maududi
speak
has said
or
is
you want to
accurate?
step out? Can I speak or I'll step out? You keep cutting me off.
Dean, what Maududi has said in for Surah
Thank you very
19:7,
much.
is that correct, Dean?
No use for me. You keep
Dean,
jumping
is
off.
that correct?
Thank you. I'm done. Thank you. Get another.
Dean, is that correct?
Thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Dean, is that correct?
Okay.
Do you mind if I respond? Is it okay if I respond to what was said?
I would love to. Yeah.
So you notice there was a little attack towards me in the beginning. I don't care. It's fine. I'm not upset. You know, people can think whatever they want. The issue is I've, looking at comparative religion, we look at the Gospels. Even Mustafa Akkad, who made the movie The Message, he calls it the Testament. He in his own movie, which was, affirmed by Al-Azhar University, they call the Gospels the Testament. They call the Torah. They don't see the text as corrupted. This big show, this Hallmark movie, The Message, that was approved by Al-Azhar University, and a lot of shuyukh take that perspective. So this is a very modern kind of thing that I see a lot of people doing. And it's a really bad position on many fronts. If we say that the Injil is corrupted, you could take other routes. Like Khalil Andani brought up the perennialist argument. A lot of these people don't even know what perennialism is. They don't know other positions because they know this very narrow view of Islam. And unfortunately, I've watched a lot of these Christian apologetic videos. I see I think it's fair, robotic response. It's a robotic response where I have to repeat the same arguments. I don't have any other new information. And they don't even understand the implications of taking this argument to its fruition. If I take the position, Andani was saying you can take a perennialist way of affirming the text, and you can kind of say, well, it's spiritual. There's a way that you can do that. I'm not saying it's a perfect argument, but it's a much better argument than this one. If we say that all of these texts are corrupted, that means that God allowed for corruption of the text. That means that God is weak. It means God is a deceiver. It's very, very bad theologically speaking. The implications of taking this position to its conclusion, it's so bad. It's so horrendous. And I don't even think these people understand that that's where you're going to go. You have to go that route. You have to say that God is bad, or you have to say God is weak. And I think that's very bad theologically speaking. And another point too, looking at the texts, if you don't have these texts, how can we know who these prophets are? You could say, oh, the Hadith have some, pictures, some images that give us an idea of, who these people are, but it's not full. I did the only really kind of side-by-side comparison that you could do with the Quran and let's say the Tanakh is the story of Joseph, right? There's a surah, a chapter in the Quran called Yusuf or Joseph, and you have the passage from Genesis, that a portion, and that's the closest that you're going to get, and it's a very kind of spiritual, poetic story. It does not give you details. So if we say that these texts are not true, then we don't have any information. We have nothing. Like, I was going to do a dissertation on Jesus through a Jewish, Christian, and Muslim perspective. There's nothing in Islam. Like, you don't have substantive stuff to write. I can only go to mystics. I can't really use anything. What, he's born of a virgin. His cousin's John the Baptist. He made pigeons come to life as a baby. It's very, very little. It's so little to talk about. He's a prophet of God. He's a messenger of God. You could say he's like the word of God. There's so little. There's so little information. So if we say that or we take the position and say, well, the New Testament's corrupted, except what confirms with the Quran, I'm like, that's sloppy academia. That's sloppy scholarship. That was the argument that Aladdin was trying to bring up. I'm like, why? How could anyone buy that? Then any religion, we should take their position. That's not good. That's not good theology. It's bad theology. I'm sorry, Aladdin.
Agree.
That's terrible theology, and it doesn't work. It's not consistent. And if you try to bring that up to any theologian, you're going to look like a fool. Sorry, brother. That's all I can say.
I think, yeah, I completely agree. I think it would lead ultimately to the understanding. I mean, the word Injil, let's take Injil, is not definitively defined in the Quran. It doesn't give you a scope. It doesn't say, by the way, when we say Allah sent down the Injil, this is explicitly what we refer to. Instead, the Quran just makes allusions to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and it also makes allusions to other texts. I think what you would end up basically doing if you took the idea that Allah allowed for corruption to occur, knowing with the foreknowledge it would happen, and you still affirm it, and you still call it by identity the Injil, even though the majority of it has been corrupted and plastered with, in the Islamic paradigm, blasphemous statements, you would basically end up saying things like, well, who's to say that this wasn't the Injil, this other thing, or this other thing, or this other thing? You could find anything the Quran mentions and arguably say this could be the actual original Injil. And if it is, you don't even have a criteria of well, it can't be blasphemous because, well, according to this idea, that Allah can actually use blasphemous textual corpuses to bring revelation, as long as there's some hidden nugget of truth in there somewhere. And I think that's a very bizarre way of looking at how Allah works in the world. And I would find that really, really difficult. I'm going to let up some others now. Hello there.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Are you a Muslim?
Yeah.
Ah, cool stuff. So have you been following along? We're talking about the Islamic dilemma. We talk about how the Quran.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man. So do you have any thoughts?
It's crazy, man. It's mind-boggling. It's kind of where do we go from here, right? What is the future? Since there's 1.2 billion Muslims, and for better or for worse, Islam introduced them to the idea of a Messiah and to the Torah and the Injil. So there's some value in that, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. It seems to me, one sec. Yeah, it would seem to me that the Quran. Okay, so the way I look at this, because I'm trying to look at this as honestly as I can, right? Because I want to know what the Quran actually teaches. What was the intent when it was revealed, right? Or when it was written. And it seems to me as if the Quran has, through oral tradition, stories. Because scholarship tells us that at that time in Arabia, in the Hijaz, there wasn't a biblical text. There wasn't something that they could appeal to that was written. So they were hearing oral stories about Musa, about Ibrahim, about Noah, and so on, and they were using them in ways to make arguments for a prophet. So in this context, it would be Muhammad, right? They're basically saying, look, just like you had in the time of Noah, this happened. This is now happening in some sense to Muhammad, or this is why those who, were Noah's family, applying that to Muhammad's family, or whatever parallels the Quran author might be trying to make, he's doing this because he's taking already accepted ideas, which is largely speaking the Torah and the Injil that we know today, and potentially other things, and he's just making arguments from them. But he's not getting it 100% right because he doesn't have access. And this, again, I'm not a non-Muslim, so I'm free to make this point. He doesn't have access to a written account. So he's only using the oral tradition, and the oral tradition can have variants. This is very common in all traditions. So you see the screen at the moment, this is a good example of one. We can see here in Surah Al-Maryam, Ayah 7, it says, we can go to the actual Quranic verse if you'd like as well, but it basically says, Yahya was born, and there has not been anyone ever called Yahya before him. And you look at early tafsir writers, they seem to be divided on exactly what that means, but one opinion is that it really does mean there never was anyone called Yahya before him. But we know what this is trying to allude to because, of course, we have a very similar story in the Gospel of Luke. But in the Gospel of Luke, as Maududi points out here, there's a slight variation. In the Gospel of Luke, in chapter 161, it says, in none of his family, they had the name John. So the Quran has basically took the same story, but it's modified it slightly. You could say maybe it just left out a bit of information. It's less verbose. It's more brief. But that to me seems like it's perfect evidence of an oral tradition. It's just an oral saying that has been passed down. It's made its way to the Hijaz, to Arabia, and whoever is compiling the Quran has included it because that's how they think of it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so I've watched a lot of the content, and I don't have a horse in the race. I just want to, kind of see what is the truth is. I'm coming from a sincere place because I don't have any personal. But anyway, so I heard something that was interesting. So I kind of went down a rabbit hole after hearing about all this stuff to kind of like Jewish speakers, rabbinic speakers. And since they also have a problem with the New Testament and the idea the Messiah is supposed to come just once and take care of everything rather than a second coming. So with Jesus being the Messiah, what do you guys think of that? That they're saying that, well, he should have done the job, but he didn't do the job, so how can he be the Messiah?
So I'm not going to go into a different topic here at this point because there is a lot that can be said about that. So my main thought here is just how does this relate to the Islamic dilemma?
Well, I guess my question is, what do you think going forward Islam will become? Because I think this will become more and more apparent. So what will happen? What do you think the future holds? Because I still, religion is more than just about finding faults or certain things like that. Like there's a whole apparatus that's behind it, like millions of people, billions of people, all their families, all their traditions, like
sure,
it has to evolve into something else.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the future entails for Islam specifically. I have my own ideas as to what will happen in response to these kind of arguments. I think that we will start to see perhaps more fractures within Islam because certain positions become untenable. I think that one of the ways that Muslims try and solve the Islamic dilemma by saying that the Injil and the Torah were totally different things than what we have today, I think that's demonstrating that goes against early scholarship. You won't find scholars in Islam say that as a majority position, or even a significant position. That to me shows that, hey, there's fractures here, and people are trying to come up with new explanations. And of course, you look at John Fontaine, who's wrote or is in the process of writing a book, giving his opinion on this. So it kind of shows you that people are trying to come up with alternative ways of dealing with the Islamic dilemma. But ultimately, yeah, what I hope to demonstrate is that this passes, and that people should question whether or not Islam is true, and they should think about the alternatives that they have. In Islam, of course, Muslims believe that they have Isa. Well, I would encourage them to look at the teachings of Isa, and they can be found in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So I've just added Ahmed up to the stage. Hello, Ahmed, are you there? No?
Yo.
Oh, wait. No, there he is. Hey.
Hello.
How you doing, Ahmed?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Have you... so this live stream is about the Islamic dilemma. Are you a Muslim? I assume you are.
I'm gonna change the subject, okay?
You can't join a live stream about the Islamic dilemma and then change the subject.
No, I'm asking a simple question.
Okay, but
Okay.
Does it have anything to do with the Islamic dilemma?
I'm talking about the Bible.
Okay, so I've not actually used the term Bible in any of my argument up to this point, and I don't intend to, because I think that the Injil and the Torah is all that you need to demonstrate there is a dilemma with the Quranic text. If you want to ask me things totally irrelevant to do with some sort of part of my faith, then that's a different live stream.
Open. Wait. Open.
If you do it, I'm
Romans
going to kick you
5:8.
down. Does that have anything to do with the Islamic dilemma? Does Romans 5:8 have anything to do with the Islamic dilemma?
Just open it.
Okay, what does it do? How does it relate to the Islamic dilemma?
Open the Bible? No.
No, I'm just
Just
wanting
read it.
to deal with
Let the Okay, wait.
I'm going to give you a few seconds to give me something related to the Islamic dilemma, otherwise you're going down.
Okay, look.
So,
Look, the Bible
Ahmed,
says,
do you actually
but
have
God-
anything to say
Wait.
about the dilemma, or are you just here to do a Christianity versus Islam Q&A?
the dilemma. Wait. The dilemma about the
Okay,
angel.
Ahmed, what's the dilemma? Just so we know you understand it, please explain the dilemma, and then please give your point.
Okay, wait. You talking about the Quran copying the Bible by
Nope,
No, you still
No.
haven't articulated what I'm saying.
that's not what we're talking about.
That literally tells me everything. That tells me you haven't been listening so far.
look.
So, Ahmed, I think maybe
the
go
Bi- the
down,
Bible says-
listen some more, and then come up later when you understand the topic.
Yeah, I'll push you
Just
down. But if you put in the
give me
private
one
chat if you have an
minute.
actual question or objection to the Islamic dilemma, and I'll let you back up.
I have.
Okay,
Well, you
what
don't
is
know
your
what it is.
Question. Look.
Is it about the Islamic dilemma?
Well, he doesn't know what it is yet.
Yeah. Just wait. Give me 1 minute, man.
Which-
Why are you so scared, man?
Well,
I'm not scared. I think you're wasting
I'm
your time.
afraid for you. I don't think you know what you're talking about.
look.
So that's why I'm scared.
Okay. 1 minute, let me talk. But God shows His love
No, but
for us.
wait a second,
and that
Ahmed.
while
Have
we-
you proved that you know what you're talking about?
What you're talking about? Tell me.
So, Ahmed, we're talking about the Islamic dilemma. When I asked you to please
what the
define very
dilemma?
briefly what that was, you said that we're making an argument that the Quran copies the Bible. That's not the Islamic dilemma, Ahmed. So I think maybe go down, listen intently, and then come back when you have an objection to the dilemma.
Dilemma.
Okay, I've pushed you down. You're out of the stage, Ahmed. You're still in the backgrounds. And so obviously you still have access to the private chat. If you put anything there related to the Islamic dilemma, I'll see it. And if you have anything of substance, I'll let you on and you can talk about it. Hello there. Isa. Can you hear us?
Greetings. How are you guys? How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Can you hear me properly?
Alive. Yes, Isa, we can hear you.
Yes.
How you doing, Ibn Dawood, Mr. Ibn Dreadlock? What's happening?
Alive. So Chris, just for context, this is that guy. Well, I don't know if he still calls himself this, but this is that guy from the corner who calls himself the Black Shia. If you remember, I had a conversation with him a while ago, and he's the one who showed me the hadiths about Isa being white and then him being brown in just like two hadiths like from each other.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So he's from the Sufi Shia sort of perspective. So
that's interesting.
Let's see what he has to say about this.
Yeah, it's good to get different perspectives, man. Do you have any thoughts on the Islamic dilemma?
Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. You all know it's made up deep down, but I guess I'll help you all, right? I mean, I'll be fair today. I'll just assist your.
Wait, which is made up? The Islamic dilemma is made up, or the?
Yeah.
Because, I don't know. Because what else?
It hasn't paid attention to the wording used. Where should I start? Can I deal with what the gentleman Isa there said that was wrong, just as I put to come in? Is that right? Can I refute him then? Okay. So Isa, you made a claim that something like what it says about God, if he allowed his scriptures to be changed. Is that correct?
I did say that, yes.
Can you remind us what you said about the reflection of God, if that's the case?
I said if God allows for God's text to be corrupted, that allows that you have two conclusions. You have either God is kind of monstrous and wicked, or God is weak and God cannot protect God's text.
Why would you say he's wicked?
Well, because it allows for deception. Why would God allow for deception of, God's creations?
Okay. So do you agree that before the Messiah came, the rabbis, Pharisees, and so on, they definitely twisted the text and made people believe many things that were against the text, even if they had the correct text? The tradition was to follow them. Is that correct? That was a tradition God set up, correct?
Well, some people did that, but my point is the text can't be corrupted. Fine, people can say and twist the words. I don't have an issue with that. I think people will do those kinds of things, but the original words of God cannot be corrupted. That's my position.
I hear you, but the way it sounds like you're saying it is the first written text of Moses, that original document can't be changed. As in, you can't rub it off and so on. It's got some divine power protecting it. But if someone were to copy it onto another page or whatever, papyrus or something, you're saying that can be corrupted, or none of it can be. What are you saying?
Well, I would say that other portion isn't the text. That's just a copying of the text. The original words are going to be, they're divine words, and that's it.
Right, but then so you're in agreement with the Quran then, aren't you? Because Allah says that his words can't be changed, number one. Number two, he says, woe to them who write with their own hands and say this is from Allah. So you've just basically said the same thing as the Quran, correct?
Yeah, I don't think anybody is in a disagreement with that.
Yeah, I'm in disagreement with that.
So
Isa,
you clearly disagree with what the Sunnis say. So I guess give your own perspective on the idea of the Islamic dilemma, and then let's build from there.
I mean, let's be fair. I guess we're both going to agree basically on the dilemma issue because it's more or less thoroughly Quranic, and you might uppercut or spin kick intellectually the Sunni pagan because he's bound by his whole religion's made up from fake hadith. But I do think you'll have to take a little knock because you're literally bullying the retards of the Muslim community by taking Sunnis as Muslims. But anyway,
so just to confirm, Isa, you do agree that their position regarding the wholesale corruption of the Torah and the Injil is wrong?
I don't even think we have that position. What we're saying,
they're the Sunnis.
Yeah, but I'm saying we both have the position that the original Torah, as the Isa said, and the original Injil of Isa, these have not been changed. Our issue is that people have written stuff, said this is from Allah, and presented it as the Injil or the Torah, etc. Do you understand? That's the issue.
Just wait.
Yeah.
So when we go that far in, the question then is: at the time of Muhammad, when the Quran is revealed, is there a uncorrupt Injil and Torah available at his time?
You mean for anyone to like literally the Injil of Isa as one document, like that
as an
separate
incorrect form?
I would suggest no. That there isn't like you can't go and find here's the Injil of the Injil according to Isa, as he preached it, so to speak.
Okay, so the Quran tells people in Surah Al-Ma'idah ayah 47 that they have a duty to follow what is in the Injil, the law of the Injil. And it says that if they don't do this, they will be considered among the disbelievers. How is that possible if the Injil is no longer present in any sense?
No, I didn't say in any sense. That's what I said. The Injil as it was given. So you've got the gospel of Jesus. Yes? So, for instance, if you were to look at the Seerah of Muhammad, you would find many Quranic verses in there. You have, let's say, that 4 Seerahs or 4 life's biographies of Jesus, and you're going to find words of Jesus in there. So you do have parts of it. So if you put them all together,
right, that's sufficient for Allah to call it the Injil.
Well, that's what it is, because when Jesus went somewhere, it said he went here and preached the gospel. So it's referring to what he went and preached.
Right. Okay, but so in the Quranic corpus, it doesn't say anywhere there's like different Injils. There's no mention of one Injil over here, one Injil over here that has something different in it. No. There is just the Injil that came from Allah that was given to Isa.
No. I'm saying he. Yeah, sorry. No, what I was saying was not one over there and one over there. I'm saying he, Jesus, was the only one that had the Injil, and he preached it. So there wasn't a Injil of Paul and an Injil of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and so on. There's just the Injil that's relevant. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree. I think that the Quran makes that clear. The Quran also says in 7:157 that Injil is written with them at the time of Muhammad.
What verse are you referring to? Can you put it up?
Yeah, sure thing. It's chapter 7:157. I'll bring it up now.
Thank you very much.
Because to me, this is a confirmation of what would have been available in the historical context. And there is no mention of taking it in parts, but rather just the Injil generally can be used because it is authoritative. So if I share this, here's my screen. Can you read this? Is this big enough for you?
Hold on. Those who
follow I'll read this out loud for us all and the audience. Those who follow the messenger, the unlettered prophet, who they find written, and the word written is in the Arabic. We can see it right there. In what they have of the Torah and the gospel, that is the word Injil, who enjoins upon them what is right and prohibits them from what is wrong and makes lawful for them what is good and forbids them from what is evil and relieves them of their burden. So it's clear at the time of Muhammad, and the Tafsirs will agree with this as well, there is a written Injil. And you say that
okay, I see what you mean. No. This is, I'll be honest, I am a bit rusty I gave up No Defense debating Christians years ago, but you lot have come back with some real powerhouses for the Sunnis going into their scholar text. No, what it is before, I'll be honest, you lot were easy work 10, even 5 years ago. Now you lot again with Arabic, you're going into the tough seers and their scholar. The way you lot spin kick up at Sunnis with intellectually, it's just the fact you're coming for the Quran. If you went for the Hadith only, I wouldn't get involved. But because you're coming for the Quran now, that's our book. Sunnis are the pagans, do what the hell you want. Refute them all day. But when you come for the Quran, anyway, let's get back to the text. So as I was saying, those who follow the message, so it's specifically saying, when it comes to the prophecies of Prophet Muhammad, these are the legitimate bits that are the Torah and the Injil.
But that's not what it specifically says, though, is it? It just says that you can find him in the Injil that's written. It doesn't say the Injil is only to be used in prophecies, which is not something that most Muslims would agree anyway. Most Muslims would say, no, it's also binding in law, because there are other parts of the Quran that seem to imply it's, or explicitly say, actually, that it's binding in law. So, again, it doesn't say only take parts of it. It's just talking about the Injil as a whole.
Those who follow the messenger, which is Prophet, you agree, Prophet Muhammad, right? The unlettered prophet,
in this
whom
text,
they find, it's written, described, whichever way you want to put it, in what
the
they
word
have.
Written is in Arabic.
No, but bruv, it says in there what they have of the Torah and the Gospel. So that literally says what I've just said, meaning you haven't got all of it. It's in what you've got of it. So even what you put up there, thank you very much for putting that translation.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll look for the word for
transliteration.
word.
Look, written with them in the Torah and the Injil. This is just the English translation, and they've kind of added this to be a bit vague, maybe.
Isa, just to confirm, I'm even looking at Corpus Quran. That term of the isn't there. It's just in. It's just fee for in. So the text just says with them in the Torah and the Injil.
Okay. Obviously, I'm bound by being fair and just.
I'm gonna leave a link right here in the chat for you. Go and see for yourself.
No, that's my favorite. I use the Corpus Quran. Okay. What I will do. I'll be honest. I wasn't fully prepared. I just saw this come up, and I thought my brother Daoud is here, and I haven't spoken to him for ages. So let me give him some hassle.
We love you, but we're coming for all of you. Just letting you know, all of you.
Brother, I'll let you know. You are gonna need some serious therapy after I feature you. I'm sorry. What is it again? I'm on my phone. What was it? I can see Al Araf. What's the number? Is it 7? Yeah.
157.
7157.
No. Yes. 7157.
Yeah. Chapter 1. So sorry. I'm just taking Corpus. Sorry, you lot and everyone listening, waiting for me to deal with my interlocutors.
You go look at it. From my point of view, where I'm coming from, the Quran never says there are different types of Injil, there's different segments, but rather it just says there is the Injil, and it gives predicates to that Injil. It talks about how in Surah Al-Imran, Ayah 3, how the Injil is sent from Allah. It talks about how the Injil is something that is authoritative because it is something that the Christians are commanded to follow. This, of course, has a historical context in the 7th century. This means then, without any qualifying verse, the Injil is just to be taken as a whole. And because of that, we have to look at it holistically. The same with the Torah. Now, the only thing that needs to be said here is there is a verse, Surah Al-Baqarah, Ayah 79, that talks about how a group of them, and in the context, you look at the early commentators, they talked about how this is most likely about the children of Israel in the context of the time of Musa, how they took the Torah as it was being received to them, and they made their own copies, and they sold it for a little gain. But this does not in any sense imply universal, worldwide corruption. The Torah is lost. It's game over. Because again, that would make no sense. Why is Muhammad, for example, in this verse, talking about the Torah and saying it's authoritative? You can find me in there. At no point does he say, but it's only this section of the Torah. In fact, there's a verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, Ayah 85, that actually condemns the Jews for following only a part of the Torah and ignoring the rest of the Torah, which again makes it very clear the Quran thinks of the Torah as a singular thing that is authoritative. It's not something you can divide into parts.
All right. Let me know when you're ready for me to.
Yeah, I'm good, yeah.
Just to add one final point, I think we should sort of start bringing this up too. So I brought it up to the first to the Fazel guy that we spoke to. So there's no reason why, if the Quran is like an irregular plural noun, so like the singular for Quran is Quran, the plural for Quran is Quran. There's no reason why the Injil can't be the same thing. So when they say, oh, the Injil is singular, it can also be an irregular plural noun. The Injil could refer to one thing, the message, and it could also refer to the 4 accounts. In the same way that the Quran can refer to what Muhammad received in Ramadan, as well as the entire 114 surah recitation. So I don't see an issue with that.
I would say that was when I first converted around that time, that was the understanding that we had, that there was the original specific gospel, and some would also say, well, it's the collective gospels, but the truth or the consistent parts of it, something like that. So,
but the reference Injil can be made to both, because the Injil isn't only singular in the same way that the Quran isn't only singular. It can also be plural, like you have sheep and sheep, or fish and fish.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what, and that's what I said. I'm very rusty with this, because I'll be honest, whenever I tried to speak to any Christians or atheists and whatever else, they would always come back to me with, well, your Aisha was this age, and I say that's Sunnis, that's Sunnis. So it would always be it would always be a conversation that I'd have to start explaining how Sunnis are not real Muslims, they're pagans, blah blah blah. A Sunni would come along and they would interfere. You Shia, you this, you this. So then I thought, you know what? Let me just focus on the Sunni pagan monkeys, and then then we don't have to deal with them, and it's just us.
Humanity. Do be generous with your language, yeah. Don't want to have like.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Please.
All right, savages. All right.
No, none of these things.
Well, that's fair. The Quran says it turned them into apes and swine. But that's part of the Quranic language. Yes.
Okay.
No. The Prophet Muhammad says clearly in Sahih Bukhari, the Sunni pagans will follow the Jews and Christians step by step, inch by inch, so much if they went into a hole, they would follow them. They have followed them. So obviously the same punishment that beget them begets these people. That's it. Okay, anyway, you want me to... I'll reserve my language, my colourful language. I'm not swearing, I'm just using intellectual prowess. But anyway, the word indahum with them, I think, is where they've put what they have the Torah. So refreshing my mind, Brother Dawood, this is kind of how it was back then.
So if we say that the Quran affirms the Injil and the Torah, and what is referring to in the Injil and the Torah is equivalent to the first 5 books of Moses and the 4 accounts of the Gospel in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, do you have any issue with this proposition? I think that's our main point.
Do you get it? Like when you're saying...
Isa, I think you're cutting out because I'm pretty sure you're trying to talk. You there, Isa? Isa number 2.
The Sunnis stole his mic.
Am I still in?
Yeah, you're still in, but you're just breaking up though.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, you seem all right now.
No, I was making a point that refreshing my memory, I do believe that our conclusion back then, this like over 20 years ago, was that if you're a Muslim having a conversation with a Christian back then, the Christian believes in the 4 Gospels or might even believe in some apocryphal Gospels, and he's going around preaching the Injil, and he as you were saying, all of them are considered one sort of gospel, as in one message. So I think we did think some verses were referring to it in that context. Do you understand? So therefore, but you couldn't take the verses where it says we gave Isa the Injil and then try and transpose that to the 4 Gospels. Do you see what I mean?
Well, you can, given that Surah 94 says that Muhammad received the Quran in the holy month, but it was only like a couple of ayahs. So if the Quran can be a couple of ayahs and also a 114 chapter book, then the Injil can be a couple of words or the words that are transposed into the tellings of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Okay. I guess it probably have to go to tafsir with this. It's suggesting that the whole Quran came down to Muhammad and was unfolded, if you like, in his life over time. But if it doesn't say that in the Quran, fair enough.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Right, guys,
Go on.
I was just going to say,
are you kicking me off now?
Maybe in a bit. We'll see. Because this is going into other things a little bit, I think. But I'm going to add this.
No, I'm dealing because I dealt with the verse, but the whole when you look, because you lot deal with the verse which says confirmed with them, right? Confirming what's with them, correct?
Yeah, there's many verses that say that. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that wouldn't. Your whole thing about the dilemma is that the Quran is confirming what they saw, what we see today as the 4 Gospels, and therefore it's kind of refuting itself because the 4 Gospels are contradicting what's in the Quran. So it's confirming something that refutes itself, correct?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a person accused of a crime says, that person's really truthful. And then that person says, yep, I saw him steal that thing. Yeah? That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I suggest that's not correct, and the Quran makes it very clear that the Injil of Isa says different things to what you lot claim, and he didn't claim to be God, etc.
But isn't that just assuming the correctness of the Quran from an Islamic paradigm anyway? Like, if you're going to see that, then I could just be like, well, as a Christian, obviously the Quran author has to be confused because I'm a Christian and I just assume that this can't be true. So therefore, it has to be what I think it is. But you wouldn't accept that. Like, if you knew that's why I was saying it, you wouldn't accept that at all.
No, because I'm not saying it from a Muslim perspective. I'm just saying it from the fact that I used to be Christian and then Trinitarian when I grew up. Then I was, listening to and discussing, debating with Jehovah's Witnesses, and then so on, became Muslim later. So I've always got the memory of the various stages. And I'm saying you don't have to be Muslim to see the fact that Jesus is continuously trying to throw off any kind of idea that he's divine.
He's saying. No. Real quick question, Isa. Do you still remember the Lord's Prayer?
I do. And that's one of them that I would use against.
Can you recite
it? Our Father, who art in heaven. In fact, I was using that the other day to somebody. Anyway, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. Yes, I do it. Go on.
I was just curious because I've had a lot of people come up to me say they used to be Christian, and then when I ask them this, they don't say it. And I'm like,
bruv, I've got pictures of me. I've got pictures of me in my choir, and bruv, come on now. I'm yeah, no. I get that's you. Maybe cool, they do, cool. But they're clowns.
No, that's fine. I know you're legit. It's all good. Yeah, I would just say, okay, you're moving on to like Jesus's divinity in the Gospels, which I think is kind of a different topic, really.
No, it was the factor of you're saying that it confirms that the Quran confirms, because I'm saying even if it confirmed, in fact, you know what? Let's go with that it confirms the 4 Gospels, right? Let's say the 4 Gospels in there, not Apocrypha, because I was dealing with God logic on this, and he got all discombobulated. So let's say it confirms the 4 Gospels, guaranteed that could be understood in the way Jehovah's Witnesses understood it. How would you deal with that?
I would say that the way that Jehovah's Witnesses understand it is a Unitarian, Arianist-based view that is not compatible with Islam. So Islam is still wrong, if that's the case.
So which bits? Because which John bits 1, would 1, you now...
The way that Jehovah's Witnesses understand John 1:1 is they say that there is no homoousios, there is no no substance sharing between the Son and the Father. They say that the Son is being described as in a lowercase sense God, like a little God.
But of course, who still creates everything.
Yeah, it still creates everything. So even in that paradigm, that would be counterfactual to Islam, right? That'd be contradicting Islam. So that doesn't solve it. So
no, my point is, as long as they bring it down to the lowercase, I don't have to stick to what they claim that means. You understand? So
well, then the biblical so the Injil still calls Jesus God, very explicitly. John 1:1.
Where's this? What? Where's that?
Well, this is John 1:1, and I'm even granting you the Jehovah's Witness interpretation of it because they have their own translation.
In the beginning was the Word. Is that what you're saying?
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. But they say, and the Word was a God, and they make an argument based on the definitive article in that sense. So my point is that still contradicts Islam. And as David has pointed out, they still think Jesus created things. He still partakes in godlike things.
Right, I hear you. What my only point was that it's a God in that context. And then if we read that along with everything Jesus himself says, that would fall in line with the Quran. So when the Messiah is saying, is it not written in your law, I said, ye are gods, all of you children of the Most High God. We very clearly have, when he says your God and my God, your Lord, or my God and your God, my Lord and your Lord, etc. He's bringing himself down to everyone else. And when as he says, why
if you continue reading what you're reading, because you're reading John chapter 10, verse 34 onwards, Jesus clearly, after saying that, then says, but how much more appropriate is it that I myself am called the Son of God, or to be more clear, the only Son of God, when I demonstrate this through the miracles. In other words, he's illustrating how unique he is in that sense. And of course, the Pharisees understand that because
but you said demonstrate through miracle. He said, these you shall do and even greater works. So if the point of a son of God, how you recognize the son of God is miracles,
Easter,
then
you're going off topic. I'm sorry, but you're going off
no,
topic.
I'm not. I'm dealing with the topic because your claim. I've said to you, okay, let's go with the Gospels because it's directly relating to the dilemma, and I've said, well, let's go with them. And there's nothing. We can't get into it unless we can't disprove your dilemma unless we get into the nook and cranny of what you're claiming these things mean.
Let's summarize this up, right? There is no
thank you,
heretical
bias.
there is no heretical no heretical group of Christianity, right? Like Jehovah's Witnesses, you can even say Mormonism, that has this understanding where Jesus is just as is described in the Islamic paradigm in the Quran. It doesn't exist. So it doesn't matter.
I agree with you.
You try and interpret the text. The text cannot be understood in a way that fits the Islamic paradigm. It just can't.
It can. This is my point to you. What I'm saying is that the text remains the text, regardless of how you lot want to project or anyone wants to get Greco-Roman philosophy and then spin it logos and all the rest.
Wait. No, I'm saying as long as every single different view. I'm granting every single different view. Not a single one of them is the Islamic view. No, you're not getting it. I'm saying if all of the Christian views, except the Nazarene and the Ebionites, are wrong, right? If all of the others are wrong, let's say every single one that was perfectly correct was wiped out, right? I'm saying that we're still entitled right now to look at it afresh and say, well, if we look at it consistently with Jesus's words, does that fit what the Quran is saying? And it does. That's absolutely my point. We're not bound, because not just that. When I go into the Acts and Peter and stuff, then it's literally over for you. But I'm saying, for Christians. But what I'm saying is, we shouldn't be bound by, just like you lot can go to the Quranic text and you say, listen, it actually says this, and you go to the word for word, like you're doing, right? Rightfully so. So I've said the Jehovah Witness was a springboard, so to speak, for my question of the Trinity, but I'm not limited by the Jehovah Witness. I can now read the text for myself. We can go to the Greek, we can go to Hebrew, whichever one. And I'm saying, even with what you have there, that still, if you put them in line with Jesus's other words, clearly are in line with the Quran. But the Quran corrects the misunderstandings. No, the Quran doesn't correct it because there are parts where the Quran is absent. It's silent on certain things that from the Islamic paradigm, it ought to correct, right? I've given the example with the Torah, where it talks about how in the Torah, as we have it today, there are cases where prophets clearly sinned. Like Lot, he had sex with his daughters. You guys think that Lot is a prophet, but the Quran never tells you that didn't happen. It never corrects it. So using the Quran as a criteria is not sufficient. You need other things. You need Hadith. You need some other corpus material to come in and to add that.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt. So let me respond to that. What you're saying there is already dealt with when it talks about the prophets as a whole, that they were chosen because they're righteous. So it doesn't need to go into every detail of every prophet. Like, for
righteous
instance,
doesn't mean
that
sinless.
David is. Pardon?
Righteous doesn't mean sinless.
But that's fine. But what I'm saying is, whatever it says about the prophets, it's for us as Muslims to say, well, this is something beyond. Because, I mean, when you say sinless would mean you know the law and you've broken it, right? So I would say they can be sinless, but not, they're not, what's the word, bound for, they can make errors. They can make big mistakes.
Can they intentionally sin?
Intentionally sin? I would say I've never come across that in the Quran at all, no.
Surah 21 has Abraham intentionally sinning because he intentionally lies. And lying is a sin, right?
You mean with the idol?
Yeah, with the idol.
Well, number one, I could say he wasn't a prophet then, that's one. But number two, it was this, it's a rhetorical speech as he knows. When you mean when he says he did it, right? He pointed to the idol.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which of course is a lie because it was him.
No. Bruv, come on now. In certain types of speech, he knows he's making a whole point where if you lot are so stupid to worship statues and you're going to ask who done this, he's making more of a fool of you by saying that the biggest statue done it, because the only response you can give is that statue can't move. So that's not a lie.
So he's being sarcastic. Is what you're saying.
Okay, so he's being sarcastic. But then why does he allow them? Because in the Quranic text, they actually go and discuss this. They actually go and discuss like how this big idol could have done it, and then they slowly start to realize, oh wait, he was lying to us. It's obviously him. Why did he allow that? If he's just being sarcastic, he should have immediately said, no, guys,
where are you getting this from? I want to see this discussion where they discuss which idol done it. Are you serious?
It just talks about Dawood, can you try and look in Surah 21, see if you can find a specific part for me? I know it's in Surah 21, I'm just not exactly sure where. But I mean, this is like Muslims acknowledge this. I mean, to be fair, they're probably Sunni Muslims, but there are Muslims that would say, yeah, Abraham lied.
I'll be honest. I would take your view over Sunni pagan Kafirat any day. So, yeah, whatever your opinion is, forget the Sunni.
Right.
Forget that.
But, okay, so I mean, the Quran also says Muhammad sinned. Surah 48, ayah 2.
So start, Chris, we already start around like ayah 60.
So
actually,
what was that?
Ahead like this.
Hold on. What was that? Sorry.
So in Surah 48, ayah 2.
Oh, 56, I guess. 2156.
Okay, 56.
Around there. Yeah.
2156. What are we looking for? Abraham, yeah? 21.
Yeah, this is Abraham, yeah.
Okay.
Right, so he made them into fragments, so Abraham smashed the idols, except a large one among them, that they might return to it and question. So he even intends for this to happen. He even intends for them to think that it was a large
2156. 2156. Oh, 58.
Okay. Yeah, I've gone ahead a couple of verses.
Okay.
Then in 59 it says, they said, who has done this to our gods? Indeed, he is of the wrongdoers. They said, we heard a young man mention them who is called Abraham. They said, then bring him before the eyes of the people that they may testify. They said, have you done this to our gods, O Abraham? He said, rather this. The largest of them did it, so ask them if they should be able to speak. Then, so they returned to blaming themselves and said to each other, indeed, you are the wrongdoers. So they're actually taking him seriously on this. They think he's being serious.
Hold on. No. Right, so what verse was that last verse?
If you look on the screen.
Which verse was that?
64.
Okay. 64. You've gone far, boy. Okay, right. So I think you've got that wrong. They said, have you done this to our gods, O Ibrahim? He said, nay. Some doer did it. Their chief is this, so ask them if they can speak, right? So he says, if they can speak. So he's mocking them, saying about the gods, you're worshipping things that can't speak, they can't move, etc., right? So they, who were the chiefs, they returned to themselves and said, indeed, you are the wrongdoers. Yes?
Yep.
So what's the problem there?
So they took him seriously. He wasn't being sarcastic. He didn't go, oh, hang on, guys. Look, I'm just being sarcastic. No, it obviously was me. No. He's saying, look, it's the big statue. In fact, the thing is just so you guys know, and Rob from Sentinel Apologetics is here, so he might be able to contribute a bit to this.
Oh, snap.
We actually know where this is. This is actually a source that predates the Quran, right? This story. It comes from Genesis Rabbah, and I think it's also partially mentioned in the Book of Jubilees. This very story. And in this very story, it's very clear, because there's a bit more information in it, that this is serious. Abraham actually does do this as a way of trying to deceive them into thinking it was a large statue. In fact, if you read the context of it, he leaves the large statue untouched so that he can blame the large statue. That's the whole point of not destroying the large statue.
No, that's the story.
I'll bring it up, brother.
What I'm saying is
that'd be good.
You just said that the chiefs agreed that the statue done it. Yes?
Well, no,
that's what you claimed, right?
Listen to what Abraham said, and he said, look, don't look at me, it's a statue. And they turn around to discuss this.
Yeah.
The reason they would do that, to my mind, just from a plain sense interpretation of this, is because they actually believed Abraham when he denied it and said, look at this statue. At least enough that they took it seriously and they talked about it. This can't be sarcasm. If it's sarcasm,
no.
The original sources that this comes from, this is a parallel to a prior source. It is meant quite clearly in Genesis Rabbah and the Book of Jubilees. Abraham is trying to convince them that it is this bigger statue.
Oh yeah, but by the way, very very simply, Isa.
Right.
They asked
what
him,
I'm saying is,
Isa, in 2163, they ask him, "Have you done this?" His first response is no. Isa, if you have kids, and they spill juice on the carpet,
Yep.
and you come to them and ask them,
Yep.
Jamie, was this you? If they reply no, that is automatically a lie. That's denial of reality.
Well, yes,
So
it's a lie.
Automatically a falsehood.
No, I agree with. No, I agree with you, but we're talking about whether it's a sin or not. And what I'm saying is, in a demonstration, is that what's that reverberation?
Lying.
Oh, there's some background noise from somebody.
It's on the Ten Commandments.
It depends on the context, right?
Nope. Period. Lying's a sin.
Okay, well, I suggest
when
if you're using it for demonstration purposes. I agree with you. Adultery and fornication.
I'll let you finish. Go on, Issa.
Yeah, what I was saying was, I agree with those actions, but when it comes to words and rhetoric and demonstrations, it's very much something very different. So, for instance, the context of a lie, in one instance where you're literally lying to people to for the sake of maybe money, etc. But if you're literally demonstrating a religious thing and they're asking you something, and at the end you're trying to demonstrate something about their God, then that wouldn't be a sin in and of itself. But I can't deny it's not a lie. But I'm saying you brought this up as an example of sin, and I would say 100% that's not an example of a sin because of the intention at the end of it. So, for instance, when I guess it's not the same, but when Jesus was asked, should we give tribute to Caesar? And, he brought up the coin because they wanted to catch him out, obviously, in a political way. And he said, whose insignia is this? And they said Caesar's. So he said, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's and render unto God what's God. But instead of just answering it, what he basically meant was, Caesar has no right rule in Jerusalem. Do you see what I mean? So I think the whole point should be taken as opposed to just the individual life.
Yeah, but Issa, that isn't a lie, though, right?
What with Jesus? No, but no. My point was he was in a political situation, and instead of answering direct as being God, if you want, he kind of went around the question. You could say a political answer. I agree, it's not a lie. But my point is, because of what Abraham wanted to demonstrate within the whole story, I'm saying that's part and parcel of the demonstration. In the same way of deceit, like if Abraham's got a sword and he's fighting his opponents, he's not going to say, they ask him, are you going to strike me to the right or the left? He's obviously going to say the opposite of where he's going to strike them or not, or just strike them. I'm saying that's part and parcel of the thing. I agree it's a lie, bro. It's not a sin.
Really stands up, bro. Now I've got a message on my StreamYard thing telling me that there's now 10 people in the backstage and people are trying to join, but they can't join.
All right.
So, Issa, I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind dropping out. No problem. Thank you for joining us.
Wait.
Go on. Wait, before you do that. Yeah, go on, Rob. Yep.
Yeah, all right. Sweet. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, I'm also here. I just had a general question.
Hash.
Who's that speaking? Sorry?
I think frozen again.
Someone just said something.
Sorry, did you say somebody wanted to talk to me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, is he?
Can you hear me?
He's the number one.
Okay.
No, who's speaking? I can't see you speaking.
Can everyone else mute?
To deal with the confusion, sorry. So, Issa, Rob's going to show you something. Add me on stream. Hold on a second. We're not ready for you yet.
Oh, okay.
Who, me?
Yeah, just wait 1 second. Add me on stream.
Yes,
no, you.
We're going to show you something. So
yeah.
Just wait a second, please.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sort of.
Do you want me to
showing my screen right now?
Okay, I'm going to add it to the stage.
Yep. Now I've purposely started with a blank screen, so you can see it live on there. So this is the trusty old Libronix, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in Legends of the Jews. Here we go. And it'll load in just a moment. Come on. There we go.
Must be a big
All right.
one. There we go.
Yeah. Now, just for clarification, So it's Louis Ginsburg is the original guy. Jewish Publication Society.
Add me on
I have
stream.
the latest.
Can you mute, please?
Yeah, there's a lot of background
There we
feedback.
go. I've muted him. There we go.
Okay. So 2003 is the latest publication, but it started in 1909, and as you can see the dates, it's been incrementally updated to, add all the necessary connections. Now, on the left-hand side here, let's go to Abraham. And this has nothing to do with Islam. This has everything to do with the legends of what the Jews did when the so-called oral Torah, right, and the Talmud, what they added on top of the Genesis text. So when we come here to, the fiery furnace, now, just before that, okay, just before this section, when we go up, where you have Abraham having a dialogue with Nimrod and so on, let's see what he says here. He says, let's see how the story reads. So Abraham refused to appear before the king. On the other hand, he granted his father's request that in his absence he sit by his idols and the kings then take care of them. Well, what do you mean by take care, right? So alone with the idols, and while he repeated the words, the eternal he is God, the eternal he is God, sounds similar to Surah 112, he struck the king's idols from their thrones and began to belabor them with an axe. And with the biggest he started, and with the smallest he ended. He hacked off the feet of one, and the other he beheaded. This one had his eyes struck out, the other had his hands crushed. After all were mutilated, he went away, having first put the axe into the hand of the largest idol. Wait, is that in the Quran? And then the feast ended, the king returned, and when he saw all his idols severed in pieces, he inquired who had perpetrated this mischief. Abraham was named as the one who had been guilty of the outrage, and the king summoned him and questioned him as to his motive for the deed. So that's also in the Quran, right? Isn't there a discussion about that? Abraham replied, I did not do it. It was the largest of the idols who shattered all the rest. See thou not that he still has the axe in his hand? And if thou wilt not believe my words, ask him and he will tell thee. Wait, that's also in the Quran, this notion of the idols speaking and they're lifeless. Then it leads to... So see... Wait. So he's destroyed the idols.
No,
right?
but I'm saying you haven't said where it's from, whether it's before the Quran or not. You're just saying it's Legend of the Jews, but you haven't said where it.
This is a compilation. This is a compilation of notes from Jewish literature within the 2nd century CE all the way up to the 5th century CE. And what I'll do is, when we come to the key point with respect to the furnace, there'll be a footnote there by the scholars. So the scholars that were part of the editions in the 20th century, they will actually give you the citation. They'll give it to you. But it's leading now to literally a verbatim, word for word verbatim statement that you see like a carbon copy of it in the Quran. So now when you come to the fiery furnace, right? So notice the Quran story repeats the same thing. He destroys the idols. Guess what? That's why he's sent into the furnace. So what I'll do is I'll skip all this. This is basically a discussion that's happening between Abraham and so on. But notice, cast him in the flames. Okay? Now notice who's in the scene. Gabriel. So God hearkened unto the prayer of Abraham and sent Gabriel to him in his dungeon. But wait a second, there is no Gabriel in the Genesis story. Gabriel, the first time Gabriel appears is in the book of Daniel. But let's keep skipping down. So, let's see here. Skip. So when Abraham's thrown in, he raised his eyes heavenward and spoke, O Lord my God, thou seest what this sinner purposes to do unto me. His confidence in God was unshakable. When the angels received the divine permission to save him, and Gabriel's there. Gabriel approached him and asked, Abraham, shall I save thee from the fire? He replied, God in whom I trust, the God of heaven and earth will rescue me. And God, seeing the submissive spirit of Abraham, commanded the fire, cool off and bring tranquility to my servant Abraham. That's exactly in the Quran. Allah told the fire, be cool, be a tranquility. Now, see this footnote here? If you click on this footnote, literally, may cooling and comfort be granted. This is a literal translation. And notice, the scholars are making this connection to the Quran. But here's all the sources that predate the Quran. And some sources have Michael, not Gabriel. But the point is, it's thoroughly Jewish. And when I come down over here as well, to this other footnote, let it just quickly load, and I'll conclude on that point. 1 sec. Okay, let's see, is it this one? Yes. So see how he's talking about...
Hello?
See how he's talking about Muhammad over here, but he's basically saying the author of the original, however, was a Jew, and don't forget, they're writing like, Mohammedan is the way Oriental scholars in the 19th, 20th centuries wrote. And parallels from rabbinic literature and blah, 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 and on it goes. So,
see, that's... go on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically what I could do is later in that footnote, they're talking about Arabic sources, how they got the text into the Arabic, and then if you make the dot connections, it's like, oh, that explains how Muhammad with Syriac Christians in that region and the Arabic translation of that story, how he could then like hear about the story, in the first 40 years of his life, and then conveniently he writes about it, or talks about it in Surah 21. So yeah,
this might work with the Sunnis and other non-learned, non-studied people. I generally would study the opposite in order critical information. So there's a book by Ibn Warraq was a great one in my studies, which was called Why I'm Not a Muslim. I think he's got a few others, and I think he references this here. So there's a lot of things where they say, well, this is it the Gospel of Mary? There's another one where Jesus, I think, is making loads of clay birds out of clay. My point is, it doesn't seem to have any. What would you say is the negative aspect of what you're saying? Because when you're telling me that, for instance, that's the legends of the Jews, well, it could be equally the legend of the Ishmaelites. So what's the problem? I don't get what you're saying.
Chris,
means revelation.
But go for it. Yeah.
Okay, so the first problem I have with this is, how do you know this isn't the Injil, or like how do you know this isn't like what they considered to be the Torah? My point is that because the Quran never explicitly says this, and you have to infer it from the text by what it quotes and the kind of language it uses and so on, and the stories it tells. That's how you understand what the Injil is and what the Torah is from the perspective of the Quran. If we find stories like you alluded there to the Proto-Evangelion of James, which is another source, and I think the Gospel of Thomas, I think is what you alluded to. How do you know that the Gospel of Thomas is not considered part of the Injil by the Quranic author?
But what difference would it make? Because I'm saying we're told.
And Chris, this is the crux. What you're saying, your question, and whatever answer you give, this is the crux of the issue. In fact, I would like to also share my issue, but yeah, answer the question, and I want to show you one more thing from Jerome on that. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay,
sure.
So just I was saying was, go on. I thought was it me? That was on.
My thing with this is that.
Yeah.
If the Quran is affirming the Injil, and the Quran came as a confirmer of the Injil, and it could potentially be the case that the Injil, according to the Quranic author, is the Gospel of Thomas, or at least partly, it could be Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the Gospel of Thomas, and potentially other stuff. It makes the whole Islamic dilemma even more interesting, because now we have to figure out how to reconcile those sources with the Quran. And these sources are very difficult to reconcile with the Quran. So, for example, the Syriac infancy gospel starts off by praising Father, Son, and Holy Spirit as the one God. That's how it actually starts. Mm-hmm. The Gospel of Thomas, at the very end, talks about how women should be in some way transformed into men so they can enter the kingdom of heaven. And that's a saying that is attributed to Jesus.
Okay.
And the Quran seems to quote from it.
Okay. So, I mean, I know that the ones to do with the clay birds is not from the Gospel of Thomas. I know that for sure. It might be the infancy.
No, it is.
That's the infancy. There's two Thomases: infancy versus the Gospel of Thomas.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The infancy. Yeah.
Okay. So what I was saying was, the whole point is it's referencing these books, and the Quran is giving you the basics or the archetypal ideas of what would be in line with what Jesus taught, which has been the same thing from all the prophets. So if it's in line with this, where he says, my God and your God, hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one Lord, etc., then it can be accepted. If it's not, then it's to be rejected. And it's that simple. It's, if it's giving you the things in regards to the laws of the Torah, etc., the whole point is to have the conversation that we're doing now, in which we literally annihilate all of your beliefs that you've embellished on top and all the bits you've put on top of it of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, based upon the words of Jesus himself. So we're being directed to look at the words of Jesus, which are consistent with his own words and the Old Testament. Do you see what I mean? So once we go along,
criteria and how you figure it out, right? That's again using the Quran as a criteria to determine what is authentic and what's not authentic. Again, remember, I gave you an argument as to why this is insufficient.
No, but that's not true. That's what I'm saying. The problem is, because you lot are stuck in your book and beliefs in history, you try to project it onto us. We, however, are guided to use our intellect. So even if we leave the Quran, we true Muslims prioritize logic, reason, and rationality. So even after the Quran, whether we become atheist or whatever else, we use it on any document and we look for consistency. And wherever there's contradictions, we know there's a lie and we leave that to the side. So it's not just based on a book.
And this is where I'd love to jump in. Like,
go on, Rob, jump in.
Like,
you were going to let me go in a minute.
Chris, you want to make a point and then.
Go on.
All I want to say is that what he just did is a Sunni level argument, with the exception that he said we use logic, but then your logic still presupposes that the Quran is true.
Yeah, that's the
no.
I have with it.
Hold on, wait. Hold on. What I was saying to you is that regardless, for instance, if I was an atheist, right, I would still come along and say, well, you've told me he's God, but yet he says he doesn't know the hour of judgment, and you've said God knows everything. You don't have to be a Muslim to work out that's a contradiction.
That's nothing to do with Islamic dilemma, though.
Oh my God.
But that's what I'm saying to you is, it does solve the dilemma, because wherever you are as a human being, you've learned to survive. One second, let me finish this bit. You've learned that when things have contradictions, they generally are not true. The things that are truthful are consistent. Yeah, so that's a pattern we learn as humans. Robert Isa.
Right.
Okay. So here's okay. I'm going to summarize. I'm going to talk to you and just summarize like the Islamic dilemma situation with everyone that discussed it, Chris included, and everyone. They've done a fair job in showcasing every angle of the issue, right? Now, but for me, this is just me now speaking. I take that model and I modify just ever so slightly to emphasize a very obvious, simple point. The Quran is literally the kitab of Allah, right? It is the book. It's the word. It's literally like some sort of matrix downloaded information through Muhammad. Because Surah 3 and elsewhere, like for example, when we're talking about Mary in the temple, Allah is telling Muhammad, this is from the unseen. You weren't there. You weren't an eyewitness to Mary being fed in the temple, and when Zachariah was checking in on you, and they were drawing like pens or reeds as to who would be your guardian. So Muhammad, this is direct special revelation downloaded into your mind, just like Trinity was downloaded how to fly the helicopter. The Bible, however, is a completely human text, written by human authors, guided by the Holy Spirit. That's the difference. Okay? Now, that means Allah can never, ever make one iota of a mistake. All right? When you're talking about past history. Because see, he's telling Muhammad, you weren't there. So whatever I tell through you, the audience that you're talking to, Jews, Christians, and so on, it literally, Allah is on the hot seat now. Allah has to get history right. So when the Pharaoh drowns, the Pharaoh has to drown. There can't be a non-drowning Pharaoh, right? If Abraham was thrown in the fiery furnace, he has to be thrown in the, there can't be a non-fiery furnace. So, now share my screen, because I want to show you, putting that aside, now putting the Quran aside, let's start with the first mistranslation of a phrase in Genesis by a Christian called Jerome, who then made the Latin Vulgate for the Catholics. And this is his argument as to why he did it. So just to show you the Latin, here's the Latin Vulgate. In Nehemiah 9:7, he speaks about, well, I'll show you the how it should be read in all English translations. It should read, "You are the Lord, the God who chose Abraham, whom you brought from Ur of the Chaldeans." Now, Ur is not a Hebrew term. Ur is a Akkadian term, because see, Abraham wasn't speaking Hebrew. He came from the Chaldean country well before Moses, which means he's speaking a language that predates Hebrew. In fact is a parent language to Hebrew. So Ur just means city or country in that language. In fact, when Stephen in Acts 7, when he speaks about the country of the Chaldeans, he got it right. Now, notice that the Latin Vulgate, so this is the English translation of the Latin Vulgate that Catholics use at the time. Notice it has fire of the Chaldeans. It's like, uh-oh, now what? How did Jerome slip up on that? So, and here's just to clarify, here's the Latin. Igni, where you get ignition. Igni Caldorium. All right? Now, here's his explanation. In place of what we read in the Greek, in the Septuagint, so see, the Septuagint translators of 300 BC, they got it right. They translate Ur in the Greek as territory, not fire. But so Jerome is like, no. In place of what we read in the territory of the Chaldeans, in the Hebrew, it has in Ur Kesdim, that is in the fire of the Chaldeans. Now, why did he translate Ur as fire? Because the Jews, taking the opportunity afforded by this verse, hand on a story of this sort to the effect that Abraham was put into the fire because he refused to worship the fire which the Chaldeans honor, and so on. Now, when we then come to what the critical scholars say, so we're talking biblical scholars, so this is John Goldingay's 2020 commentary on Genesis. Up here in regards to Ur of the Kasdites, notice he's transliterating it. This little footnote up here, if I click on that, this is what Goldingay says. Notice, a homonym. So, Ur, if you take the Hebrew word Ur, it means light or fire. But this falls into what we call a phonetic fallacy. For example, yam in English is an edible plant, but yam in Hebrew means water. So I don't mean the same thing when I'm using the same phonetic sound, yam, right? So here, Ur in Hebrew is not the Akkadian Ur. So Goldingay says a homonym means flame of fire in the Hebrew, right? Which encourages the development of a midrash. What's a midrash again? Legends. When you start compiling and making up explanatory stuff just out of thin air, right? Encourages the development of a midrash about Abraham being threatened by fire, the hand of the Chaldeans, about Haran, the idol maker, ending up in a fiery furnace. And notice, Jubilees, Targum, Surah Jonathan, Rashi, and the Genesis Bara, and blah, 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 blah. So that's how this legend came up. So here's my concluding point. I'll stop sharing. If it's true that Abraham was in the fire, we should know about it in the BC period. Way back. Even biblical authors should have commentated on it. Someone in the New Testament should have spoken about it. Someone in the Old Testament should have spoken about it. The only time we ever see a fiery furnace story is in Daniel. That's convenient. But not with Abraham, because no one dared mistranslate words, right? By the time you come to Jerome and the Jews in his time, they didn't know that Ugaritic and Akkadian and all these dead languages existed. And they did a phonetic fallacy by assuming Or is Hebrew and hence fire, and then they made up this midrash. Now, if it's in the Quran, that means Allah is like a troll. He's like, no. True history is by these legends. The Quran says so. These are nothing but tales of the ancients. These tales is true history. So those who rejected Muhammad's message and said this is tales of the ancients, right? Allah's like trying to encourage Muhammad. No. Even though they react that way, no, this is true history. But you and I, with hindsight, can look at this and go, yeah, it's just a midrash. It's not true history. That's my issue, and that's why I reject the Quran, because if it's failed in this one point, the whole thing fails. And Chris has seen me tear this up a bit, because then when I look at all the other stories in the Quran, it just parrots legends. That's all it does. Yeah. So
I do think there is significant weight to that. Before we get your response, Issa, I just want to go through some super chats, because I've noticed people have given super chats in, and I just want to go through some of these before we get your response. So Daniel Apologetics says, here is my jizya tax because I'm a Christian. This is also on behalf of my Jewish friend who believes Ezra is a son of Allah. Very interesting. Press 1 in the chat if you're a Jew and you believe Ezra is a son of Allah. Let's go on to the next one. So Patriotic Z says, paying my jizya. Obviously, Daniel Apologetics has inspired him. Love you, Chris. Talk to Jay and DOC and Rob Christian more. Yes, I love all those guys. Really cool guys. Much love to you and my Christian brothers on stream and everyone watching. And we have one from you, Issa. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on as a member of the panel. It's been amazing having you on. It's really, you're obviously someone who approaches this from an intellectual perspective. You obviously have a unique perspective because you're not following the normal traditional line we hear from most Muslims, but it is a pleasure to hear it because it is well thought out at the very least. And I always appreciate that, regardless on the things that we agree and the things that we disagree on. Issa, do you have any comments to Rob and him pointing out?
I would also like Issa, the other Issa, to comment as well, if you, based on what I presented. But yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I do think it went off the dilemma, or I guess the dilemma point encompasses the whole Quran in a way. For me, the things which you're presenting in regards history, I believe the fact that we can't find which pharaoh it is and stuff in Egypt, I think they've really done a work on all of us when it comes to findings in history.
Issa, you don't want to bring that topic up when Rob's here. Just so you know that.
And that's also a red herring. It's related, but it's not directly engaging the question. Allah can't slip up on history one time.
I agree with you, but what I'm saying is, if the people who control what we call archaeological evidence, or the evidence, the archaeological police, right? If they're the ones that are governing what's given to us and what's not, and how people are, covering this and whatever else, then, and they're the enemies of God and enemies of the books of God, then it doesn't make sense you coming along and saying, well, this is not history. It just goes against the whole point of what we're both saying. But my point is, when you said,
Issa,
in regards to Mary, this is what we revealed to you.
You're attacking where the information comes from and not the information itself.
You what? Say that again.
What you've just done, Issa, is a fallacy. It's a formal fallacy. It's called a genetic fallacy. You're attacking the source of the information, the Illuminati or whoever gives it to us, and not what the information actually says. So, for example, every time you told me something about the Quran, I said, oh, well, it came from some random guy in the deserts, so I won't believe it. That isn't cause enough for me not to believe it.
But I haven't finished yet. I've stated one point. Let him finish.
Let him finish.
Then I'm getting to the other point. So I'm saying he mentioned it as in the whole thing in regards to history, right? So I have to deal with that part. But then he also, and then he's saying, well, the whole Quran is this revelation thing. But then he quoted the verse which says, this is what revealed to you of the unseen. And that is in several places throughout the Quran. Now, just remember, the brother who had that debate with Sharon, he would give you the, what do they call it? Not Platonic, but whichever it is, in Neoplatonic. I think these types of Shias, the perspective is that a lot of the stories in the Quran are happily heard by Prophet Muhammad from various places, but it's for Allah to gather in his mind which ones are true, which ones are false. That is a very, what's the word, legitimate understanding of the Quran by, let's say, the Ismaili Shia. But so my point is, don't try and put all the Muslims in one and then say what you've said in your conclusion, because literally what you said, where Allah
it doesn't
says, and
matter
this
about
is
the Muslim faction. I don't care about the Muslim division.
No, I'm saying what you said yourself.
You
Listen
all
to what
believe
I'm
the
saying
Quran
to you.
comes from Allah, right?
Bruv, listen to what I'm. If I've said to you that Prophet Muhammad, 50% of the stories of the prophets he heard from Jews and Christians, and then Allah edited which bits are correct and which is not, and that's the Quran, except for where he says, and this is what we reveal of the unseen, that's specifically downloaded, as you say, it contradicts what you're saying. That's my point. So you can't come with your Sunni garbage and then try and force that on me, right? What the Sunnis tell you.
Oh my goodness, you've completely misunderstood. Okay.
Well, you literally just said
Inglorious Bastards. Wait, no. I'm going to use this. I'm just going to use this as an analogy. I'm going to use this as an analogy.
And therefore you have to accept it as it's wholly download.
Let Rob speak.
I'm going to use this as an analogy. The movie Titanic and the movie Inglourious Bastards. Is Titanic a true recount of Titanic? It's like a bit of it's a midrash.
It's historical fiction.
James Cameron, exactly. James Cameron. Now, centuries later, if the only thing we can piece together is the movie, all the actual event is just through the movie. Are they going to conclude that there was a Jack and Rose on Titanic with a love affair? Blah 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 blah. Well. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, there is a historian that says, yes, there was a Jack and a Rose. And yes, Jack did drown because he sacrificed himself. And then a whole legend, and then, like, ethical issues can arise from that. And then, let's just say it becomes a standard text in history books or something. That's what the Quran's doing. Same thing in the movie Inglourious Bastards, which is an inversion of World War II. Was Hitler killed in a cinema? The answer is no. But it's molded in such a way to show genuinely the horrors of the Nazis, but in a twist of humor to show how petty they are at the same time. In other words, their ending is really petty and how it should be, right? Like, you see this phenomenon of historical fiction throughout human history. I mean, the whole point of a midrash is precisely that, to raise up an ethical, theological issue. In this case, there's a mistranslation of Or, because they assumed Or is a Hebrew word. So it says fire from the Chaldeans. Oh, why? Maybe because the Chaldea, pagan, polytheism, Abraham, and see, we believe in this guy named Abraham, the true Hanif, the true monotheist. So he must have destroyed the idols, you see? And so you have this legend developing and growing.
They developed
only
the legend
in the
from that?
period. Yes, from a mistranslation. And then the Quran in the 7th century comes along and repeats it verbatim.
You need to give me as to why
it's verbatim from Allah. Yeah.
Hold on. So you're saying because they called Chaldea, they got the word in one place it meant light, in one place it meant something else, and then they created a whole story of Abraham being in fire from that. Is that what you're saying?
To summarize Rob's point very quickly, 2 words.
No. Is that no? Let him answer with that bit.
Isa, 2 words.
Okay, I'll answer this, and David, you go.
Isa, oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Imagine you came across a word. Okay.
Yeah, I know about this, bro. I've studied linguistics. So.
Okay.
Yeah. I understand. Bro.
Oh, then you should understand this.
I do. And this is why I'm refuting you. The reason,
if you came across a word like yam, And
Yes,
then you say you said something off the cuff like, "Oh, yam sounds just like the Hebrew word yam," but
it's the same in
what is that
Chinese and
phonetic?
every language. That's the case. Yes, we know.
Right. The point is, there's a phonetic fallacy. You would be committing a phonetic fallacy if you said the two words are the same. So the Jews were ignorant of the cuneiform text that we discovered in the 1800s that showcases the language that Hebrew came from, which is Ugaritic and Akkadian. The word means city or country, and notice that all English translations of the Bible transliterate it. They don't translate it. It's a toponym sort of name for that region. Now, Jerome is at fault for translating it into Latin as igni, because igni in Latin is fire. And on top of that, when you have the legends cropping up this notion of or is a Hebrew word to mean like fire. No, it's not. In the context of the fact that the story is coming from a Chaldean context, not a Hebrew context. So Allah, now here's the point. Allah doesn't know the difference between Akkadian and Hebrew. That's the slip up. If he's an omniscient deity, you should know there's an Akkadian language that sounds exactly like the Hebrew language, but they're not the same word.
Right. So are you saying that prior to
Saint is agreeing?
So are you saying prior to Saint Jerome that no one saw that error, correct?
The Septuagint is an example of that. The translators of the Septuagint understood, because don't forget that they're sort of connected. There are connections back to the Babylonian period at the time of Daniel, because see, Jews are coming out of Babylon. They already know the Chaldean language. They are aware of the cuneiform, right? So this is around 3rd century BC. They correctly translate into Greek what or means, which is territory or city or country, which Stephen in Acts 7 in the New Testament, he gets it right. Yeah, Abraham came from the territory of the Chaldeans. It's only when Jerome does his Latin Vulgate and all the Genesis Rabbah, the rabbinic, the basically rabbinic Jews, when they mistranslate it,
you're saying
this whole legend appears out of whole cloth.
And that's my point, where you do not find these things happening where somebody has one word and then they create a whole story that you're claiming. But my whole point was the difference between me and a lot of the people you speak to. I can go through the Bible and find things that almost word for word in the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, right? Him to attend in the Bible and so on. No, I'm not. I'm making a small point. I'm saying in relation to the Bible, where you've got stuff in ancient Egypt almost word for word, does that mean that Moses, because he was raised in Egypt, came along and put it in Psalms and then put it in other parts of the Bible?
Guess what? The Bible is a human work, and therefore that's okay. Because when we see the 10 Commandments paralleling the Code of Hammurabi, when we see Proverbs 22 paralleled a Pharaoh's list of Proverbs, that's okay, because the Bible is not downloaded information from God. You have human authors writing, literally engaging with the culture of their time. That's okay. The Quran, though, is literally wait. The Quran is literally this illiterate dude. Okay, this is a literate guy who doesn't know about the prior scriptures and so on, and Allah is downloading information into his mind, and that's supposed to be the miracle. In other words, how could Muhammad know about Jesus making a clay bird and of drowning Pharaoh and Abraham from the fire? Well, it's miraculous because he didn't know about all this. And Muslims themselves have told me, well, Rob, this implies, what you're saying is, this implies Muhammad has a big stash of a library of legend texts in his backyard that he can draw from. So it's either he has that, or it's a genuine miracle where God is feeding him this information. Now, but if it's God feeding this information, that means God is trolling all of us. Because we know in history there was no such thing as a fiery furnace for Abraham, and yet God decides to still say, yeah, that's correct still.
But you've basically just
undermined and then the dilemma is you have the Torah and the Injil and the Quran mentioned as being this thing that Muhammad affirmed. So when I go back to the Torah in this example, I don't see fire. But the Quran saying there is fire with respect to Abraham. Oh, that's not the Torah, even though you're saying it's the Torah. It's this legend that Allah is assuming is the Torah. Same thing with the clay bird thing. The Gospel of Thomas is the Injil, but as a Christian, the true Injil is not the Gospel of Thomas. It's the four Gospels. But
you've undermined it all already. That's what I'm saying. By you saying what's the work of man, and therefore they can make these errors and so on, then the whole lot is
nothing to do with the Islamic dilemma, Isa. Let me try and give you an answer.
Okay, that's all I can say. I'll let you guys deal with it.
Because then anything the Quran says.
Wait, Isa has something. Isa number one has something to say.
Yes.
I want to engage what you were saying, Rob. I think it is important what you're saying is that academically speaking, when we look at these texts, like, how do we look at history? And I actually kind of want to push back a little bit on what Isa number 2 was saying, which is this idea that there's this sort of kind of conspiracy theory of history. If that's the case, you have people who believe in certain things. There's a lot of people who are religious and they study certain things, and it doesn't align with where they stand. And they have to figure out how to reconcile that information. I think it's kind of unfair to go and say these people are like kind of like seeking to destroy, seeking to confuse and destroy what we really think. And I think it is an interesting question to think about, that if we look at ancient Muslims, they didn't say that. I think the Bene Yedei argument is a solid one, where it's between the hands, that the Torah was between the hands. And that was the Torah of the time, and you should judge by the Torah. If we say that the Torah is corrupted and false, why would that passage be said? Why would that have been said? And you could say, well, the Hadith are false. That's fine. I mean, that's, but there's also Shia Hadith too. You have a whole corpus of Shia Hadith. You have the corpus of Sunni Hadith. I mean, I think you have to take a better strategy than just saying, well, all of it's garbage, all of it's rubbish. I think we have to work with things that we have.
What? Brother, I didn't say that. So let me just say this, because I notice you're all arguing with Sunnis and stuff that you've had in your history. What I'm saying is, my personal journey, even as a Christian, I was really trying to find out who the Pharaoh of Moses was when I was preaching and so on, right? So me personally, not to debate with Christians or anyone else. When I became a Muslim, again, I was still trying to find, and I was arguing with Afrocentrics and them telling me my religion's false and it comes from Egypt, come back to the original black religion and all of that. Again, I was trying to find which Pharaoh. You heard them, right? You hear the black, you're in America, you hear them, right? The Kemet, right? You hear them, you don't hear them, you know what I'm talking about. So my point is, when I'm being put on the spot as to my religion, they say that Abraham religions are false. They say all of them talk about this massive thing going on in Egypt. Show me your Moses. And that's for all of us. That's the Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And my point is, it's not an argument specifically against you. My point is clearly, if we all agree Moses was in Egypt, the children of Israel were in Egypt, that many people in those events, we should at least know the Pharaoh's name. So me personally, my personal conclusion of all these years of study is that something's going on and they really want to mix and match, and hide stuff. It's not to do with you lot personally. Oh my! It's just the way I've seen the pattern.
Okay, guys, I'll just quickly say this. I think you're finally coming close to what I'm trying to communicate. So, with respect to the Pharaoh, the Exodus book does have names like Ramses, P. Ramses, for example. Even in Genesis 47, when it's talking about Joseph, suddenly the editor of the Genesis text shoves in there in brackets and parentheses, by the way, this is in the best territory of the area of Ramses. Because don't forget, the Israelites are coming out of Ramses the Great as being the Pharaoh. Now, that's why the consensus is that Ramses the Great is the Pharaoh. But if you go with now notice, I didn't know you were a pastor, so in Christian circles, there's a debate. Is it the early dating of the Exodus or the late date? If you go with the early date, it's Amenhotep II is the Pharaoh. So therefore, you have a range. 1400s BC, Amenhotep II. 1200s BC, Ramses the Great. And all the pharaohs in between, because you have a very early date view, which is a very minor view, and a very late date view, which is a very minor view. So you have this range. Guess what?
Yeah.
I even have this clipped on my YouTube. You can ask Egyptologists, do we have the bodies of all these pharaohs? How interesting. The answer is yes, and none of them drowned. None of them show signs of, in fact, all the hieroglyphs, all the mummification processes of how they died, we know how they died. Ramses dies at the age of 90 through a jaw infection, and he's hunched. Which means if he's the pharaoh, guess what? He survived the Exodus. And scholars will put the Exodus in his reign around the 7th year of his reign, so 1272 BC, thereabouts. He starts his reign in 1279, but he dies in 1213, and his son Meneptah takes charge. So therefore, when the Quran in Surah 10 says that his body's washed up along with his armor, based on Kathir's comments, and as a sign for those who disbelieve that he died, Allah slipped up in history. There is no pharaoh body being washed up and drowned.
Where's the proof of the children of Israel being there? That's the point. So to divert to the Quran, the point is where's the proof in history?
Isa,
he's just mentioning a pharaoh.
We love you. Yes, Isa, we love you, but you have been jumping. So Isa, we're going to end it here. I have a link.
I've been jumping?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Isa, yeah. I have a link in the private chat for YouTube. There's a 4-hour, 38-minute video of our dear Rob discussing with an Egyptologist that should answer all your questions about the children of Israel leaving Egypt. Please go ahead and click there and then come back a different day, okay? But we love you, all right?
Isa, just to let you know, I muted you there. Just apologies. I just wanted David to say that because I'm going to be ending the stream relatively soon. There are a few people, I know Admi on stream wants to come up and say something. But yeah, I'm gonna
thank you
back out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming up. Yeah, it was good to hear you. And I'll catch you around the speaker's corner. So
yeah, when I get a chance, brothers, you take care. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, you too.
And click on the YouTube link in the private chat.
Cool, awesome. The Great Commissioner, are you there?
Shalom, Chris.
Shalom, brother. How are you?
I'm good. Shalom, everyone.
Long time no speak. Apologies. I know you've been waiting a while. I've been trying to get through everyone and trying to prioritize Muslims because I think that's only fair. Sig, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm okay, man. I'm doing okay. God bless you guys. I know it's loud where I am, but yeah, God bless you guys.
Sounds like you're out and about. God bless you too.
I'm literally out and about. God bless you guys. Hope everything's okay. So that's what I pray for. Maybe this should be helpful. I put it on voice isolation, so hopefully there should be like a substantial. All right, that's a substantial improvement. That's substantial difference. There you go. That's what we want to see. Yeah. All right.
So just real quick, add me on stream. You said you had something you wanted to say. I said that I would keep you in and bring you up. So now's your moment. What would you like to say?
Are you referring to me?
Yeah. I see you.
No, I wanted to say something to Muslims. I'm not a Muslim. I did tell you that in the chat before you brought me up. I've been in Hamza's Din's channel. He's the type of guy that's very rude, very controlling. He wants to control where you go with your conversations and things like that. But one of the things I wanted to, if I had to ask a Muslim a question, is as to, most Muslims don't believe that, Isaiah 53 is about Jesus, or Zechariah chapter 12:10. They would look on me who named Pierce. And I'm like, well, if you don't believe in these passages about Jesus, then this makes the New Testament false. And there would be nothing that will say that, Jesus will be put on trial according to Roman law, Jewish law in general, no bloody death, no suffering, nothing. We have literally nothing without those texts. And so I'm wondering, where did they get their crucifixion story from? Why do they need it? Why do you need 1 cross, 2 cross, 3 crosses? It shouldn't even have the word crucifixion in there, period. I'm looking at it from a prophetic standpoint. And I wanted to know what you guys think about the comment that I just made, because I'm really confused about where to get that story from. And there's no first century text to confirm their crucifixion substitution story. I don't even want to get into the Gnostics, but what is your thoughts on that?
So my thought, again, we're going to be very brief with this because we're going to be winding up soon. And also, this is a little departure from the main topic. I think it's a difficult thing from the Islamic paradigm to try to understand the crucifixion. I think that to pick the best option, if I had to pick, I would pick the understanding of Surah 4157 as not being, not talking about the crucifixion as something that is being denied, but rather something that happened, that it refutes the Jewish understanding of it. You can look
Chris,
at.
You might have to mute him because your voice is reverberating through his mic.
Oh, well, okay, there we go. I've muted him now, so hopefully that helps a little bit. But like Surah Al-Maryam, ayah 33, I think helps with building this case. There's other cases in the Quran where it talks about those who they claim to have killed, and it was them doing it, but the Quran corrects them and says, well, no, it was Allah who did it. It only looked like you were doing it. And so I think you can make these kind of parallels and draw them into Surah 4157. I'm more sympathetic to that view than the Sunni view, in all honesty. But of course, if I'm talking to a Sunni, I'll take their perspective. And yeah, I think that trying to understand the crucifixion in that sense is difficult. Just seems to be very ahistoric. And just to add to what Rob was saying and the conversation we had with Isa number 2, I think there is a way out of this from an Islamic paradigm. I think the way that you do that is you would say the Quran just isn't trying to be historic. It actually doesn't have any concern with trying to make historical claims. It's not the intent of the Quran. The Quran is actually trying to build arguments for other things, and it is quite liberal in what it uses to make those arguments. If something is a known story that appeals to its audience, that is familiar, that they can the author can use to then draw out some comparison, that to me just seems to be more likely. I mean, Gabriel Reynolds makes this point. I mean, yeah, Muslims are free to take what they want from that. I mean, that has ramifications for different beliefs, depending on what you believe as a Muslim. But yeah, that's how I would deal with it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to butt in, but I actually 100% agree with that argument. I think Dr. Wood and I had a conversation like in Texas last year. And that's what I said. I'm like, if you try to read science into the Quran and you try to read history, it's going to fail you. It's a poetic text. It functions, and that people, even the translations are not very good in kind of engaging that it's a poetry text. It doesn't use a rhyme scheme. The translators never use rhyme schemes. I'm like, you're not actually, translating the style of the text. And that kind of takes away from the text. Looking at the text for what it is, it's a poetry text. That's the genre of text it is. It's not history. It's not science. And it's very laughable when people do that. When people are like, well, the Quran is science. I'm like, are you kidding me? Have you read a science textbook? It's not science. It's not history. The Tanakh, you can argue, is a better historical text. It gives you names of tribes. It gives you chronological time periods. If that's what if you're looking for a history text, the Tanakh functions better as a text like that. And one other thing I wanted to engage as well is the about the Islamic dilemma. One of the arguments, I really think it's a bad argument that I keep hearing, is that, well, if it confirms with the Quran, it's true. If it doesn't confirm, it's false. This is a bollocks claim. I'm sorry, British term. I'm sorry, I don't think it's a good word.
I was not expecting that, but
I'm sorry, but it's such a bad term.
Bollocks. As an Australian, I can say it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to even use that word. It came out because that's
no, it's all good. It's all good. As a British man, I approve.
Because I think it's really a bad sense of argumentation where they were like, well, some of it's corrupted, some of it's not. Then I'm like, then it's false. If I put water and I put fecal matter into the water, then that water becomes contaminated by the fecal matter, right? So if I say that a part of the text is corrupted, then how do I know what's true? It's not good mechanisms. And I think what Rob was doing is a very good position. He's like, I'm looking at the historical arguments. Let's look at what means. Is fire? I think this is an important thing. How do we get from point A to point B to point C? And I'm going to tell you something I did, like through my scholarship. I was exploring King Solomon. So I said, how did King Solomon appear in the Quran versus what we see in the Hebrew text? In the Hebrew text, he starts off as a king with a lot of power, right? He has he has 1,000 wives. He has, he's not really like like this mystical spiritual person. He has a lot of wisdom, but he's not like a person who talks to animals and has control with the jinn. You don't have any of that in the original narrative. Then you go through the concept, the text of the Targum Shani, which then gives him kind of more supernatural powers, right? Then you get to the Quran, and he's talking to animals. He has control over the jinn. You know, it's a really interesting thing, because we see an evolution from point A to point B to point C, and we can see how we get into the narrative that we see in the Quran versus the historical narrative that we see from the Tanakh. So I think that's interesting.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, I don't have anything to say about that. Do any of you guys have anything to say to that, or shall we start wrapping this up?
Yeah, I mean, we can start wrapping this up.
I feel bad I didn't join at the start of the stream.
Yeah, this is like a 3-hour live stream. I was on the
only
train
thing
the whole
I
time,
say is that the Dawa guys do live streams for 6 hours, and I haven't seen that.
Oh man.
I've streamed for like a good 5 hours. There's been times I've streamed for like 5 hours. I'll say that.
Have any of you streamed for 14 hours though? Saying.
No, but they make bread though. Like, we don't make bread when we stream.
That's true. Didn't make any money from it. It all went to charity.
Yeah, it was just crazy. How much did you raise? You raised like over 1K, right? Like, that was pretty good.
I need to go check. I think I raised 4K ish for charity.
That's insane. See, like, if that was like your daily bread, that would have been good. But you know, it's not your daily bread. So
no, all it's charity, man.
I see all of your Mossad checks that didn't come in early this month. Well,
Yeah.
it sucks for you guys.
See, Mossad don't even know that I exist, bro. That's the issue, bro. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, man's a free Palestine guy anyway. So the crazy thing is that when it comes to this, to get back to the issue of the Islamic dilemma, I had a stream where I talked to Andani live on stream, talking about the different aspects of the Islamic dilemma, and there is like literature in like the 70s. There were academics in the 70s that like raised this argument. It wasn't necessarily just a thing. They were pretty confessional when they did it, but this critique of the Islamic dilemma isn't necessarily seen as like, oh, this is the only way that scholars approach this idea. But the problem that we have with the Quran is that it's a very unique kind of text. When we look at texts like the prophets or texts like the Torah, there are other texts that are similar to the Torah in terms of its like time and region. Or like the Gospels, they're written in the 1st century. We have other 1st century texts. We have other 1st century sources that talk about the 1st century period, especially in the period that we care about. But when we have texts like the Quran, especially in Arabia, the only Islamic text that actually informs us about anything about Islam in the 7th century is the Quran. There is not a single other text apart from the Quran that exists. So there's no other context that we can add to it. Now we have post-Quranic sources like Hadith and Surah, and Surah are used a lot of the time by scholars to try and fill in points of the Quran, especially from this argument that every single ayah has to have a historical context that backs it. But sometimes when you take away that approach that is, again, by later commentators, decades after the fact, the Quran is kind of contextless a lot of the time. And so when you see the Quran being contextless, you do raise the question as to insists on itself and insists on the other writings that it seems to want to draw from, the traditions it wants to draw from. We also get to remove this aspect of, let's say, Mecca or pre-Islamic Hijazi in Arabia as being some sort of like theological backwater, which again, scholars have noted that is what it is, that it's a theological backwater. But again, that doesn't necessarily seem to be the case, as in, if you remove that post-Quranic way of thinking, you have a fully well-formed language. We actually have early manuscripts. I believe it is F, I think it's like C558 or something. The earliest manuscript actually of Arabic that we have, apart from the Quran, is one dated to 643. That manuscript actually has a bilingual text where we have two businessmen trading sheep. But one of the texts is in Greek. And the Greek text contains a sign of the cross and says, "In the name of God," in Greek. So clearly, there was a fully well-formed linguistic scheme of Arabic that was there. It wasn't like some sort of backwater road. It wasn't some sort of thing where everyone was pagan, because they seem to be completely and utterly aware, at least by the time of 1643 or 643, which would mean that decades beforehand, there was an already well-formed language, and Greek would have existed in that region already. It's written on things as basic as trying to trade sheep. These things add evidence to the idea that actually the Arabians, the Arabs that were there in the region, seemed to have pretty good grasp on what Christian teachings were, which is interesting why they subvert or misrepresent them in such an extreme way. Like you actually have like actual manuscripts that like show a complete administrative language of Arabic with a Greek administrative language as well, where like the Greek text has a literal sign of the cross at the beginning, and then you have the Bismillah later in Arabic, which is like a bilingual sort of transaction code. And it's written on papyrus. It's actually written on papyrus just to like trade like basic things like sheep. So you mean to tell me that even higher up they weren't aware of the Greek language? Of course they were. If it's so aware down low on like the lower scales of just trading the basic things like animal commodities, of course, when you get even higher up in levels in terms of academic institutions or scholars and poets that were there, or even regional kings and chieftains, they would have been aware of Christian tribes, they would have been aware of Christian kings, and they would have more importantly been aware of the Christian religion, which is ironic as to why they seem to misrepresent Christians also all the time. And the reason I mention that particular manuscript is because it is the only manuscript in the 7th century, apart from Quran, that actually has some sort of entitative existence in the 7th century.
Interesting, man. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up unless anyone has any immediate thoughts.
I have one more thing I'd like to personally share with.
Okay, cool. All I will ask though is,
and then you can wrap it up.
Yeah.
This is going to be the icing on the cake.
Okay.
I'm sharing my screen here, and I'd like Isa. I think when you brought up Solomon and the ant, I think you're going to love this. This is by a scholar, an academic, who decided out of it. He has no expertise in the Quran. He has no, he's just an interested reader of this side of things, but he's a scholar with respect to tale types. He's a folklorist, Alan Dundas. And so he decided to write a very short book where he's, his expertise and his scholarship with respect to folklore. He's like, hang on, I came across this, this phrase, fables of the ancients, ? Right? So when since you mentioned the ant, I just want to show you what he writes here. It's very short, but something to think about in your own time. And this is also, cool stuff for the audience. This is what he says. He says, commentators have been puzzled by this passage, right? About the seemingly miraculous act of an ant speaking such that it could be understood by a human. There are several clues obvious to a trained folklorist as to the source of this passage. Keyword, source. First of all, we have reference to Solomon having been, quote, taught the language of the birds. And this immediately suggests the Arne-Thompson tale type 6. So this is obviously technical folklorists speak for the type of categories certain folklore fit under. And this, just to summarize what that is, because of the distribution of different languages and different cultural legends. So for example, the Chinese dragon versus say the Middle Eastern dragon, like these are tale types relative to their culture. So I'm going to skip down. He also notice he speaks about how this particular tale type has been studied and blah 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 blah. One of the notice it is of interest that King Solomon sometimes appears in the tale in Jewish tradition about in the midrashic sense of this talking with animals and so on. One of the oldest recorded versions of the tale is a Buddhist story reported in the 3rd century. Oh, interesting. That obviously predates the Quran, right? And then he goes into this background of, just to save time, he's basically, again, it's like it's a human conversing with an animal. Right? There is another Indic version of the tale, and one should keep in mind that the Jataka tales date from several centuries before the Quran. Jataka. So notice, before the Quran. The tale is of special interest in the present context because it involves an ant. A king saves the life of the king of snakes, and, he's going to go through this particular tale type. Now, what I find quite curious is that he presumes, based on his analysis, that a version even closer to the one in the Quran comes from basically a Vietnamese text, and on it goes. So then you have to wonder, hang on, Vietnam, you have these Indic contexts, India, Vietnam. In other words, a lot of Eastern mysticism and Eastern tale types coming westward, which would make sense if you're talking about a conflation of stories through caravan trade, right? So, Surah 18 about Dhul Qarnayn, he goes as far east as possible to the rising of the sun where there's no shield for the people. Oh, that's the Sirach legend of the fact that that's how they're talking about those of the Far East, because the sun rises in the east, right? And then the Far West is where the sun sets, and then there's people that there's judgment on certain people. Oh yeah, that's Spain, right? Now, I was also going to show you. I'll end it there. But basically, I was going to show you that because your name is Isa, are you aware of the fact that there are inscriptions in Arabic of the word Isa? Like, why is Isa in the Quran? And it was this certain deity named Isa that then, when Christians came into the region, the name of the deity meant ransomer, and Christians used that polemically to say, we have the Son of Man, Jesus, who was our ransom. He came as a ransom. And so then these inscriptions in stone in Arabia that predate Muhammad, when they became Christian, then the Isa conflation with Jesus took place. So then when you have Isa in the Quran, which has no etymological connection to Yeshua, oops, because if you have Arabian Christians before Muhammad using the term Isa to mean ransomer, now the Isa of the Quran is a loaded term theologically. So yeah, I was going to show you that as well, but I want to respect.
I'm sure you could go into a full study of this, Rob.
I think it's an interesting hypothesis. I would say it's also potentially the name could come from Greek too, from Jesus. That's another argument, because Evangelion, Injil, is Greek too. So, and I think your argument is fair about the traders and the caravan movement, because a lot of people did tell stories and they did share information, and the stories and narratives transform based on, who's telling the story and where the story is going. And I'm going to put a little plug in, if it's okay. I have a channel on Matters Now, and I do a thing called Tell Me That Story, where I tell stories. Me and my co-host Max, we tell stories from around the world. So we read Arabian Nights, we've read all kinds of stuff. So it's a cool thing.
He brings up Arabian Nights as especially for those who are not specialists in the field. He's like, the Arabian Nights. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, guys, very much need to end this now. I got other things I need to be doing, but thank you everyone who was on the panel. I appreciate that so much. This seems to have gone really, really well. It met my expectations, so I might be doing this again. Who knows? So
Chris,
thank you so much for the super chats, and yeah, go on, David.
Just wanted to say, I really like the way you run your streams, because one of my apprehensions about doing streams is I hate it when things become like a shouting match, and then you have the whole sort of like muting people and kicking people and all those kinds of things, right? I prefer it if like people just say what they have to say, and then things reach like a final conclusion, or even better, like with Aladdin, they leave because they can't make their nonsense points. So I just want to say I like the way this is run.
Nice. I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And special thank you to Isa. Thank you so much for being on the panel. You obviously, you're not a Christian, so especially my thanks for coming on. And yeah, God bless you all, and I will see you all on the next one. Take care.
Take care.